Good morning. We'd like to welcome each of you to our 2013-2014 budget workshops. This will be the first day in a series of several days. We will have our budget presentation and we will end up developing our budget. So we appreciate you being with us this morning. We will now have our call to order and then have our roll call. Very good. Let's stand for our invocation and pledge. Commissioner Ward is going to lead us in our invocation, and Commissioner McLaughlin is going to lead us in the pledge.
Our most gracious Heavenly Father, thank you very much for your blessings. Guide us today as we embark on the works of this county. Be with those who need you today, and guide all of our citizens in a healthy, fruitful life. Amen.
Face the flag, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You've seen our agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So second.
Motion second. Let's vote. Okay, thank you. We shall now have the presentation of our proposed budget from our manager. We thank our manager and our finance director and all of the staff and all of the department heads who have put a lot of work into this budget preparation. We appreciate that, and we're looking forward to the good news you're going to present to us.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. This year, as we embark upon the budget message, and as I reflect back a year ago and the budget we were having to develop and deal with, there's a stark contrast between where we are today and where we were a year ago. Last year, we were dealing with the effects of revaluation. With a drop in the tax base, we were dealing with the effects of having to bring our fund balance appropriation in to balance the budget into a much lower number. We were dealing with having to trim the workforce, offering an early retirement incentive program. There are many other factors that we were dealing with to bring our budget in line and make it a structurally balanced budget so that we could truly have our expenditures live within the available revenues. And good news to report, which you've heard from our finance officer month to month as he gives the financial report for the current year, our expenditures are running below our incoming revenues, and we are projecting by June 30th that we will remain in balance and hopefully actually add some additional fund balance back into the fund balance pot, which we'll illustrate here in this presentation in a moment. But for today and for this presentation, I am here to present to you the proposed recommended budget for next year, for fiscal year 13-14, beginning July 1, running through June 30th of 2014. Before you, you've got two documents like we always have. And this year, hopefully, Lord willing, this presentation will be shorter because I have less to say because we're not in such crisis as we were in the past year. But before you, you have a copy of the PowerPoint that will be shown on the monitors. You also have the bound book in front of you, which takes some of the illustrations in the PowerPoint, enlarges them for your easier use of for you to view. So with that being said, if we can go to the first slide. My assistant here to help me click through these. In terms of the budget development, the budget for next year was developed taking the following factors into consideration. It begins with what we call the base budget from the current year, or that structurally balanced budget. And as you recall, a year ago, we said we wanted to create this base budget, and we only wanted to add to it if and when additional reoccurring revenues came in. We didn't want to get into a situation where we were spending our savings as we embarked upon reoccurring services within the organization. So it builds upon the structural balance budget, reflects upon some economic recovery that we're seeing in our local economy. I realize the entire economy is not back, and there's probably some sectors, private business, that would say they're not seeing recovery fully as they'd like to, but we are beginning to see recovery as it pertains to local government and our budget process. It utilizes growth in a tax base of both what we're going to call reoccurring revenues and one-time. And we'll talk about the one-time as we get into the presentation. It also includes new money from ad valorem taxes, and that's the reoccurring, as well as an additional appropriation from the ABC revenues that are distributed by the ABC system. Did want to point out on page 1 in the booklet, just real quickly before I go on, the remaining budget calendar for this year. Obviously, we're here today to review the balanced budget that is before you. The rest of this week could be in workshops. The following week would be open for additional workshops if needed. And then on Monday, June the 3rd, you would receive the recommended budget message from me with any adjustments, tweaks that you would direct in the workshops. Then on Tuesday, June the 11th at 7 p.m. is the proposed date for the public hearing on the budget. And then alternatively, you could do it on June 17th as an alternate date to adopt the budget. All right, next slide. Okay. In terms of the budget overview, the big picture, it maintains the base ad valorem tax rate at 68 cents per $100 of assessed evaluation. It provides a 2% market adjustment, or COLA, cost of living adjustment, to the workforce. And it also includes a non-monetary merit compensation. As you recall, for the past 3 years, we have not been able to do merit pay for the employees. We do not have money to do a monetary-based merit system, but I do have a proposal for a non-monetary, and I'll get into that in the presentation as well. This budget allows for limited expansion within the budget. It delays the opening of E-Block at the detention center. And as you recall, E-Block is ready to go. It's an older block of the cell that's been refurbished. It's 96 beds. If and when it is open, not if, but when it is open at some point in the future, it would take our 500-bed capacity up to 596. But the sheriff is in agreement to delaying this one more year, even though he did initially request it. But when we looked at the numbers, looked at some of the other things that need to be funded, both within the sheriff's office and the detention center, as well as across the organization, it was felt best that we hold that off for 1 year, and he was in agreement to that. This budget continues a limited fund balance appropriation, still the $2 million plug like we have in the current year, of which we expect to come back, as well as some more on top of that, because we're not spending quite as the higher percentage that we anticipated. On the next slide, this budget maintains the concept of right-sizing. That was all the buzzwords of the structurally balanced budget. And the right-sizing is the process of matching resources to priorities to accomplish our core mission. In times of economic stress, and again, I think we're coming out of those times of economic stress to some extent, a governmental organization has to ask the following questions. And these are the things that we asked last year, but we're trying to keep these in front of us as we develop this year's budget. And that being, who do we serve? What services are vital to our mission? How should we deliver said services to best meet needs? Where can changes be made while preserving services to the community? How quickly do we respond? And how do we ensure and maintain structural balance between our revenue streams and our expenditure patterns? So going on to the next slide, the board's priorities. These are your adopted priorities, which you recently adopted. There was no change to these, and just it's education as the first one, community safety second, economic development third, next health and welfare, following that facility and space needs, then infrastructure improvements, and then recreational activities. On the next slide, in terms of the budget drivers for this budget, we have minimal service expansion, but there is some. Again, that's based upon the recurring revenues. There's limited investment earnings. I think this year we have $75,000 in there for investment earnings. And remember, at the height of our budgeting 4 or 5 years ago, we used to budget $1.8 million in investment earnings, but just because the market's not delivering, we can only put in there what we think we're going to earn. The tax and tag program, which you've heard a little bit about, is where our one-time revenues come from this year. There's a one-time growth in the tax base of about $300 million. That is the tax and tag, of which that's the motor vehicle program, of which starting July 1 of the new year, all of the collection of motor vehicle taxes will be done at the time that you renew your motor vehicle registration with the state, and you'll do that at the DMV office, and the state will be collecting those. In the month that they are collected, we will actually get them back. There's no lag. And the tax and tag program, the The one-time monies is the leg from the current year that will come in next year as well. There's some double monies that will be coming in that we'll actually get to take advantage of for 1 year. But we'll talk more about that in a moment. Another budget driver is state mandated increases. Retirement, the retirement system had a slight increase on there to keep that fund where it needs to be. There's also the 1% unemployment insurance reserve, and that was to help the state of North Carolina dig out of their, Dwayne, how many billions of dollars was that within the deficit to the state? 3 or 4 billion. So all local governments as such are having to help create a reserve for them. And then the last budget driver is business personal property audits, where we're having to fund money instead of doing a system where it's based upon a contingency fee based. All right, next, on the top of page 4 in the presentation, to give you a general fund overview, the preliminary budget for next year. All the requests from all the departments were $111,861,831, $111,861,000. Reductions that were taken off the top were $2.2 million, bringing down the proposed recommended budget as of today at $109,657,668. In terms of projected revenues, we've got the same amount of money, the $109,657,000. This also includes the $2 million fund balance plug that we have from current year, which again, that we expect that to fall back into fund balance at the end of the year. And then it has a 0.6730 tax rate because the balance of that then goes to the Industrial Development Fund for its operation. So the proposed budget within the general fund is $104,523,315. This represents a 4.91% increase. And if you see the footnotes there on the bottom, you need to keep in mind that 1.4 million of this is from the non-reoccurring revenues from the tax and tag program, and so the reoccurring operations change, or the change within the general fund that is going to be recurring year to year, is only 3.58 of that 4.91. So you have 1.33% is reoccurring projects, and I've got a list of what those projects are, and we differentiate very clearly between the one-time project list and then how the recurring dollars are blended in the budget, and I'll present that to you. Okay. In terms of the revenue review, ad valorem tax rate, I've already made reference, and if you look in your booklet on page 4 and 5, or begin with page 4, there's a larger printout of the screen. Tax rate is proposed to hold constant at 68 cents with a distribution of 0.6730 to the general fund as it is currently this year, and then the 0.007 to the Industrial Development Fund. You will see in the next part on this chart or this illustration, the tax base of the current year for 12-13 is $11.3 billion. The projected tax base for July 1 for next year is rounded off $11.9 billion. Keep in mind there's $300 million within that 11.9 that is one-time revenues. So the real net effect of that is really probably an $11.6 billion tax base that we can count on year to year reoccurring to grow. So if I'm here a year from now presenting the 14-15 budget, if we had absolutely no growth in the tax base, you'd have an $11.6 billion base. Because you're taking into effect the tax and tag revenues that are one time next year. So the reoccurring increase would be, instead of 5.29, it's 2.65 if you wanted just to look at the reoccurring percentage. On the next page, on page 5 in your booklet, we show what the effect of a rate increase would be if it was being considered, which it's not being recommended right now, in terms of a penny or penny and a half, 2 pennies, and 3 pennies. And then it's based upon the base at 11.9 as such. On the next slide on the PowerPoint, I wanted to give you some information on sales tax. And normally we don't really do a slide on this, but I thought it might be beneficial this year as the state talks about adjusting the sales tax rate and the corporate income tax rate and taxing services. But of the 7-cent tax rate, we received 2.25 cents or pennies of it. Article 39, the point of sale, we received 1 penny. Article 40, half a cent. Article 42, half a cent. Then Article 46 is the local option sales tax for capital school construction that the voters of Pitt County voted in, and that was 1/4 cent. That brings you up to the 2.25 cent. So in effect of the 7-cent tax rate that has been collected, 4 3/4 is redistributed back to the state. We keep 2 and 2/4 cent. And keep in mind also that footnote there on the bottom, as you recall, we like several counties are in a payback mode for the $1.8 million that they distributed too much to us a year and a half ago. We're on a 30-month payback, $60,000 a month, and once that's paid back, we will then enjoy about $700,000 a year increase in sales tax. All right, next slide, ABC Board Annual Performance. What you have here is the chart that I had presented last year, and basically the first column shows the year ending, the net profit that they had received, the payment to the county, and then the addition that they had added to the working capital. Actually, the addition to the ABC Board working capital in the last column is their total working capital. Right now, this budget proposes to increase the distribution from $1.1 million to $1.2 million. And there's been some discussion, could it go as high as 1.3 or 1.4? Right now, we have budgeted for a distribution of 1.2. I'll leave it to the board's discretion. I know there's several of you who sit on the ABC board as to whether you think that should be higher or not, but right now it is balanced at 1 point. The overall budget is balanced at 1.2. You see the footnote on the bottom, they currently have 9.25 weeks of working capital. The general statutes allow them to have 12 weeks of working capital. The distribution of $1.2 million to the county takes into account their expenses to build the new store, to furnish the new store with shelving and those type of things you would need to open a new store. Takes into account their debt payment on that store. I believe it's a 10-year note. It also takes into account that they would still add back to their working capital next year in taking those things into account. All right. Next, we're going to look at fund balance real quick. The next few slides are the slides that have been presented year to year on fund balance. There's really nothing changed here. But, fund balance is the county's savings account. It's primarily in place to meet emergency needs and to meet cash flow needs. I think both of those are probably just as important as the other. As you are aware, our revenues do not arrive in 1/12 increments, but a lot of our expenditures do, whether it's payroll, sometimes our debt service is not 1/12, but we do 2 large payments, one in the fall, one in the spring. Those don't always coincide with when the revenues are received by the county, so sometimes we dip into fund balance to meet payroll or to meet debt service needs until those revenues come into us. Fund balance is better suited for use in terms of funding one-time costs, not reoccurring costs. And as you recall, our recent rating review agency included comments and concern about our past practice of appropriating fund balance. This is really more during the recession and how we were eating and spending some of that fund balance over about a 3-year period. We do have the Fitch rating agency in New York did review us again this past spring, continue their negative outlook on us, continue to give us the AA rating, but continue the negative outlook, even though we had grew our fund balance back from 12.04 to I think 13.67 or 69. They said they wanted to see a longer trend than just 1 year. Well, again, Lord willing, we're going to give them a 2-year trend this year at June 30th, and then hopefully continue that trend on out. Fund balance on the next slide is just the basic calculation of how that is derived. The expenditures are calculated based upon a combination of activities of 5 general operating funds within the budget, that being the general fund, which is your largest fund, $100 million plus your public health, social services, mental health, and court facilities. And then you can see the calculation there that it's a percentage of a fund balance is calculated by that dividing unreserved funds by total expenditures equals that percent fund balance. As you recall, the county's fund balance as of June 30th, 2011 was that 12%, actually 12.04 to be exact. Then last year we were at 13.69, and we are projecting over 14%. There's a more exact number in another slide coming up for this coming June 30th of 2013. If we had any erosion in the fund balance, it would negatively affect the 4 things listed there: our ability to meet debt service, possibly respond to natural disasters, meet other unanticipated demands, and again, our bond agency ratings. Again, that's really not a concern now. We appear to be in a positive direction in terms of growing our fund balance, increasing that percentage, and getting it up to your adopted goal of 18 to 20% as a figure. On the next PowerPoint slide, we do have an overall fund balance slide. You can see that Dwayne is anticipating a fund balance percentage of 14.81% as of June 30th of this year. We would like to think that's a conservative number. Maybe it's a realistic number. We'd like to hit that 15% mark, but we'll see if we can or not. But again, it's more than a full percentage point of where we were or are as of June 30th last year. On the next slide, we had charted this for you to show fund balance as of 2009 at 17.61. Then we dipped to 14.63 in 2010, down to the low of 12.07 in 11. And then 2012, we started coming back up to 13.69. And then 2013, the projection going to 14.81. Before we move on to the next slide on the PowerPoint, I did want to go back to page 6 in the booklet and just give you a quick overview of the revenues for next year. And these are general fund revenues, not all funds. Just running down the second column to the right, we're showing in terms of ad valorem taxes, $77,657,000 in ad valorem taxes for the current year. That's an increase of 5.83%. Again, that does include the tax and tag value in there that we are telling you is one time. Prior year taxes, $2 million. Ad valorem other, $440,000. Other taxes and licenses, 14.8 rounded off. And then you can see coming down, we've unrestricted, restricted, permits and fees, sales tax, sales and service, investment earnings. There's that $75,000 number I talked about earlier. And that's even down from the current year. We had hoped to earn $200,000 in our investment earnings, but again, that's just we're just not realizing that. So bringing it down to a realistic number. The miscellaneous at 2.4 rounded. ABC proceeds, you can see he's going up to that $1.2 million. And then we have the fund balance plug at $2 million. And then intra-fund transfers and a vehicle loan, which we'll talk about in terms of our motor fleet. So it brings you up to the total revenue package of $109,657,668, which meets the projected expenditures at the same amount. And again, you see the footnote on the bottom. We just want to keep driving that tax and tag is one time and that it will not reoccur into the following year. In all the expenditures that we have identified for tax and tag are one-time expenditures that nobody's going to come back next year knocking on the door saying, you gave me $50,000 in my budget, why have you cut me $50,000? Well, we gave you that $50,000 for a one-time expense, so don't think that that's your new base budget for your department. It's not. It's minus that one-time expense. All right, moving on. In terms of fee changes proposed, the animal shelter had proposed this last year. The Animal Control Advisory Board had asked the commissioners, you as a board, to consider a municipal intake fee increase going from $10 to $20 when they bring an animal in from one of the municipalities to the shelter, because the current fee of $10 has been in place for, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years, and it does not cover the cost to process an animal in the shelter and to handle the animal in the shelter. In terms of some slight adjustments and the inspections and permitting, remember last year we made a pretty big structural change in terms of how these fees were calculated and the schedule of fees were presented. In terms of residential permit fees, for building permits for renovation, they're asking to add a note in terms of minor renovations consisting of 3 or fewer trade permits will be charged $100. In terms of electrical permits for solar equipment, now this is solar equipment for a residential house, not a solar farm, which I think you'll be dealing with in the future. It currently is $200 plus $5 per cell. Proposed fee would be $100 plus 50 cents per panel. And otherwise, they're recommending a $100 demolition permit fee and then a $50 permit modification or change of contractor fee within the department. On the next page, or next slide, in terms of non-residential permit fees, changes they're recommending, again, for a solar farm, which, as you recall, you changed the ordinance to allow solar farms, and there's actually one coming before you at your next agenda. There's currently no fee for it because there was no provision for it in the ordinance. So the fee proposed is $200 plus 50 cents per panel. And then otherwise, they are recommending for a demolition permit, a $200 fee. And the reason you have this $200 fee for the demolition permit is to help to cover some of the staff time in terms of overseeing those type of procedures. All right, moving on to the expenditure review. The total of all funds, the general fund being probably being the sole largest, again, the same number, the $109 million figure. Public health coming at $9.2 million, social services 29.8, court facility fees $280, mental health $587, debt service $17.2, solid waste and recycling program $8.2, employee medical insurance $10.5, fire and EMS district $7.4, and all others at that almost $18 million, for a total of all funds of $210,844,502. Again, footnote on the bottom, $101.4 million non-recurring projects as starred back up there to the general fund that is one-time monies. On the next slide on the PowerPoint, if you refer to page 8 in your booklet, page 8 gives you a blow-up of what is on the screen. I apologize to the viewing audience that is rather small. It's a lot of information. In this chart, we have a lot of columns. We have this chart is basically the expenditure summary of all of the different departments within the general fund. First column gives you your actual for the fiscal year 11-12 compared to the current year we're in for 12-13, what you originally approved in the budget, what has been revised since that point in time, the next column, if they had a budget amendment. And then in the next column is what the department requested. Next column is what I'm recommending. Next column represents the percent change. And then the last column is the dollar change. And you can see overall on the very bottom toward the right, it's a 4.91% increase. The one-time projects are embedded within this. And we're going to break that up for you to look at so you know exactly what we're talking about in terms of one-time projects. So at face value, if you go to that second column to the right, just briefly going down that column, some of your larger increases are the Board of Elections. Even though they do have an 11.57% increase, they're increasing because they have municipal elections this coming fall. But that is offset by the revenues that the municipalities pay the county to conduct those elections. So there's revenue that represents that increase there. Otherwise, public information looks like it's going up an astounding 49.24%, but there are some one-time expenditures, which I'll go into in a minute, that will show that that's actually much less than that. Otherwise, we've got on here I'm having a hard time reading this. We've got the Sheriff's Office at 12.35%. Again, there's one-time expenses within that, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. And then coming on down.
Page 11, I can't see it. I can't read
Yeah,
it.
it's difficult. It's a lot of information.
Page 8.
If you'll flip to before we do that, let's see if there's anything else I want to highlight on here.
Can't you get this, page 11, that second, can't you get that so we can read it?
The chart on page 8, or
Oh, I got you, okay.
we could give you a blow up on
No,
that.
no, it's all right if it's in here.
Okay.
On page 8.
The Pitt County Schools and Pitt Community College are represented in there, but I want to hold off because I've got their numbers in the PowerPoint in terms of what's being recommended for them. If you'll flip to page 9.
That's page 8. You said go to page 9.
Yeah, go to page 9. This illustrates within those departments that were on page 8 that have embedded one-time projects, like you take the first one, financial services. What we're showing here is that of their total amount for next year being recommended $708,000, 593, there's a $7,000 one-time cost in there, which is a printer.
Mr. Manager, I got good eyes, but that's kind of tight. That's kind of tight even for my good eyesight.
We can blow it up for you. Within the next one, the tax administration, they've got $2.2 million in recurring costs. They got one-time costs of $35,565. Legal has one-time costs of $500. Elections, $28,800. And I'll tell you what these are on the next page in a moment. Public information has one-time costs of $80,752. Buildings and grounds, $84,500. Sheriff's office has one-time costs of $799,000. Communications, 911, $8,700. Inspections, $20,000. The non-departmental, $210,000. And then transfers to other funds, $126,000. So you see that bottom figure there, $1,400,817 is attributed to one-time projects. So now you ask, what are those one-time projects? Flip the page, and the one-time projects being recommended are listed here. Within the Buildings and Grounds Department, they have been in dire need of a new backhoe. We actually even had a pretty serious incident on the backhoe where employers were using it and it flipped. The backhoe needs to be replaced at a cost of $70,000. Deferred building projects within Buildings and Grounds, $14,500. The communications is requesting security cameras that's a 24 operation. They've had their vehicles broken into. We've had homeless people trying to break in the building. They're concerned about leaving in the middle of the night, so we were proposing to install some security cameras around the back entrance to the building where they enter and leave. The elections has additional printing costs for elections coming up at $8,000, additional temporary labor of $20,800, and that additional labor was proposed for the ballot question on reducing the school board from the 12 to the 9, and then the terms. We're having to open all the polls in the county instead of just those affected by the municipalities for the municipal election, so that represents that one-time cost. Within financial services, they're needing to replace a network printer at $7,000. Within inspections, they are requesting a temporary part-time building inspector at $20,000 just for the 1 year. Within legal, they're needing a laser color printer at $500. Within the PIO office, they have three things for this room in here. As you look around, there's a camera upgrade, portable cameras, and audio upgrade. Most of the equipment in this room, these cameras that are focused on you right now, are original to when you first went on TV 15 plus years ago. And matter of fact, as they break, we cannot get parts for them. We're having to go on the internet, on eBay, and see if somebody has salvage equipment they're selling. So we're to the point where we're in dire need of replacing this. Sheriff's office has a need of $129,000 for communications equipment. This is in direct response to the new 700, 800 radio system where they need in order to come into compliance with their radios. They are in need of 5 mobile and 5 portable radios as well for $45,000. Within their communications dispatch center, on the next one, their telephone system is actually a hand-me-down that we gave them from the public health department, and it needs to be replaced at $400,000. Also, what they call their NICE recording system, which is the recording system like we have in 911 that records all the calls that come in case there's a legal proceeding or a need to go back and review those calls, is in need of replacement as well. He's also requesting 20 mobile data terminals for the patrol cars at $25,000. Social services, as they continue to implement the NC Fast computer conversion, is in need of continuing the temporary staff that you gave them in the current year into next year at a cost of $126,000. That would be a one-time cost, and I'm proposing to take it out of this one-time pot there. Tax administration is requesting Apex sketching software for at $29,515. And basically, before we converted to the current system we're on for tax software, when you printed out the property tax card, you used to be able to also get a footprint of the house. It was kind of a etch-a-sketch type of looking footprint. We no longer have that at all. This would allow them to add that component back into the database. They're requesting security equipment at $4,050, office furniture at $2,000, The last item is part of that, I think we called it the $4 billion deficit the state of North Carolina has for unemployment insurance. Pitt County is required to pay in a 1%, and our 1% is $210,000. And basically what that way that calculates is for every position, we have to put in 1% of payroll for every position up to $20,900 is the salary cap, 1% of $20,900 against, say, 950 positions. That's how we get to the $210,000. So that one-time expense list is $1,400,817. If we did not have the tax and tag program revenue coming into this year's budget, I would probably be, I don't know if I would be recommending a tax increase or not, but I would be on the verge of it. This does allow us to do some things that we could not otherwise do. If we weren't recommending a tax increase, or if you weren't considering it, we would be delaying some direly needed projects. All right. On the next slide, let me catch up to where I'm at here. In terms of education funding, for Pitt County Schools and Pitt Community College, I think I can say for the first time that for Pitt County Schools, I'm recommending everything they asked for. And they may end up saying, well, maybe we should have asked for more. But within the available revenues, I am able to recommend to you that they be fully funded. But before we go into that, I do want to tell you that, based upon the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners data, as they rank the 100 counties in terms of the per pupil expenditures, we rank 42 out of 100. And we've slid back from last year, we were at 41. We actually have continued to slide in the wrong direction, but in the recession we've been in, it's been hard to appropriate monies for that cause. At the bottom of this slide, you see that their actual request. They are requesting $34,736,287 in current expense dollars. The rent that we charge them upstairs, $340,000, is unchanged. The capital outlay for projects 1, 2, and 3 at $750,000 for a total request of $35,826,287. That is referenced on page 12 of your binder booklet. I do want to point out that in order to accommodate, as you recall, the $750,000 for capital 1, 2, and 3 projects in the current year, they were appropriated $0 for that. No, you basically ask them to go back and look at their fund balance and to manage without those dollars. What I'm recommending in order to appropriate that $750,000, $375,000 of that would come out of the general fund, $375,000 of that would come out of the quarter-cent sales tax fund. On the next PowerPoint slide, so again, basically my recommendation, the $34.7 million for current expense, $340 for the rent, $750 for the capital outlay. This increases current expense by $731,561, or it's a 2.15% increase. Again, on the next PowerPoint slide, illustrates the fact that in order to appropriate the $750,000, half of the $750 comes out of general fund, half comes out of quarter-cent sales tax. The next PowerPoint slide gives you a history of the per pupil expenditure and our rank. Again, you can see, going back to 2006, at the height, that was probably the height of the Education Compact era, we were at the 29th position in the top one-third, which was the original goal of the Education Compact. And then from there, we have slid to 33rd, 36th, 40th, 37th. Then we came back 37th, 38th, 41st, and now we're at 42nd. And then where we will be as June 30th, 2014 will depend upon what all other 99 counties do in terms of their current expense appropriations across the state. On the next slide, PowerPoint slide for the community college, their request entails of $5,095,326 for current expense, $75,000 for capital outlay, for a total of $5,170,326. The request includes, what they would like it to include would be a restoration of what you as a board cut them in current year for 12-13. an energy cost expense addition, facilities and repairs renovations addition, and also a salary increase adjustment of 2.8%. They would like to, because the state of North Carolina, as I understand it, gave state employees last year a 1.2% increase. They were not able to give that to the positions at the community college that are county funded, but they were able to pull out of other reserves, maybe their fund balance or other adjustments. So they gave that to the employees, the local employees, because all the state employees were getting it. So this year they would like to give them 1.6 based upon the COLA as they've calculated it. Plus they'd like the county to go back and consider reinstituting the 1.2%. So the cumulative effect is 2.8. But what the employees would get, if it's approved for July 1, would be 1.6%. On the next PowerPoint slide, what I'm recommending is not quite what they're asking for in entirety. In terms of current expense, $4,873,099. Capital outlay at $75,000 for a total of $4,948,099. This is $222,227 of the total that they had asked for in addition. It represents a 4.78% increase. The $75,000 in this case as well that they're using for capital for a one-time use, I am again recommending quarter-cent sales tax. I do not see this as the go-to pot for year to year to year, but to balance this year's budget, it is capital. It's not truly brick and mortar capital, but it is capital in one sense or another. Gets me to that slide. All right, moving on to outside agencies. If you refer to page 15 in your booklet, the library had requested $543,343. I'm recommending $543,343, the net increase of about $7,600. The Pitt County Council on Aging had requested $217,000. I'm only recommending $210,000, about a $4,100 increase. The airport economic stimulus is based upon what is actually on the ground out there in terms of value. We only pay what, as part of the economic stimulus plan, what they give back out in terms of grants. In terms of the nonprofit or sustaining agencies, those on the bottom half of the chart, last year, as you recall, for GPAT, the Greenville Public Access Television, we cut them in their entirety in terms of an appropriation. It was roughly a little over $16,000, I think $16,667. I'm recommending that the board consider putting half of that back, $8,000. You will then see, as we go down the chart, for Little Willie Center, and then into the category of cultural and recreational, the smaller libraries, we're basically bringing them back up to the $2,000, $4,000 appropriation depending upon their size. And as you recall, a number of years ago we created a kind of a formula or a matrix based upon the size of the library and the size of the population they serve. They'd be given $2,000 or $4,000 if they were a small library or a mid-sized library. That reinstitutes those back to the $2,000 or $4,000. With the civic arts, the same thing, where we had cut them in years past to $4,753, brings them back up to the flat $5,000, or an increase of $247 per arts council, art entity. Okay, so that was those two slides. Okay, in terms of the PATS fund, this is more good news. As you recall, a year ago when I stood before you, we were kind of in a PATS crisis because we had we're not in total compliance with a drug testing program. We were implementing a drug testing program, but not necessarily to the letter of the law that we needed to be. And we had our funding for fiscal year 11-12 basically withheld from us to the tune of about $330,000. We were also operating a deficit within the PATS fund, so we really had a cumulative total of about $444,000 operating our Pitt area transit system. I'd like to thank Mike Taylor and Rebecca Clayton for the hard work they have done in terms of bringing us into compliance, implementing corrective actions, both within the drug and alcohol testing policy and procedure so that we're doing it the way that the federal rules and procedures prescribed. We have recovered almost all of the $330,000 from the state of North Carolina from NCDOT. There's a little bit of residual balance we're still working on, but we're supposed to get it. We have also, through some system changes, through some programs, some software programs that MIS has written for the PATH system, for billing and collections as such, and for programming of the trips, they are more efficient in the way that they operate. We're expecting them to have a positive operating margin by the end of this fiscal year. So we've come a very long way in the past year with the PATH system in terms of getting it back on the tracks and headed in the right direction. With the EMS fund on the next slide, this corresponds to page 16 in your book. The EMS budget has been recommended by the EMS Oversight Committee. It maintains a 4.6 cent EMS rate, obviously held constant. It does increase within the growth in the tax base. Are we good on the slides? It does increase funding for 7 of the nonprofit squads and the 2 county-operated squads. It does continue the capital fleet replacement program for ambulance units. Do I need to start over?
That's all right.
Oh, I don't have the voice for it, so I'm about ready to run out of voice. So again, it maintains the 4.6% rate for the EMS budget and pretty much a flat budget other than some nominal increases based upon growth in the EMS system. As you see on page 16, we give you the tax base out of the $8.9 billion tax base. We do show a tax base of $5.9 billion, which does make me question, just a note for our finance director and our tax administrator, are there one-time dollars built in that base as the other base?
For the, not,
Just something to keep in mind.
should not be for the EMS portion.
Okay. We'll look at that further. All right, so on the next slide, this basically is an illustration of page 17 in the booklet that's showing that we added about $78,254 to the expenditures within the EMS fund based upon the growth in the base. Again, I'm assuming that base is all reoccurring and there's no one-time dollars in there, but we'll check that and verify. On the next slide, Shelley, for the fire fund, for your 20 different fire departments, there are rate increases being asked by 5 of those departments. And on the but first of all, that slide that you have there corresponds to page 18 in your booklet. On the next PowerPoint slide, we point out the 5 fire districts asking for the increase and what they are. You've got Belle Arthur, Blackjack, Gardnerville, Staten House, and Stokes. Belle Arthur's going from 5 cents to 8.85, Blackjack 6.4 to 7.4, Gardnerville 8 to 9.4, Staten House 0.025 to 0.0275, and then Stokes 0.05 to 0.07. On the next PowerPoint slide, the fire departments are able to ask for you, as the Board of County Commissioners, for an appropriation of $10,000 every 20 years, one for a pumper and one for a tanker. And we have 3 departments asking this year for the $10,000 allocation. I believe in the current year we had 3 departments ask, but they never actually came through and bought their truck. So it's probably just being pushed back a year. So these are being budgeted, and if they follow through and purchase the truck, then we would, assuming you approve it, would then cut them a check for that participation on purchasing that unit. Okay, in terms of human resources and benefits, on the next PowerPoint slide, we have completed once again the reclassification. Is it going out again? We may need a new computer up here. It's part of that one-time project list. Okay, we're back. These positions here that are illustrated on the screen and also on page 19 of your booklet are positions that were studied as part of the ongoing classification program, where we study a third of the workforce each year and make recommendations to change salary grades up or down based upon the comparables internal to the organization and external to the organization. This table here on page 19 of your bound booklet represents 40 positions, of which you have 5 positions on the bottom being recommended for a downgrade. You have 35 on top being recommended for an upgrade, for a total of cost of $25,354. So a modest cost. And on the next slide is the 5 positions being recommended for a downgrade. On the next PowerPoint slide, this corresponds to page 20 in your bound booklet. In terms of this year's new budget, there were almost 28 positions, 27.75 full-time equivalent positions requested or asked for by all the various departments. I'm recommending 5 based upon the available revenue, recurring revenue. Okay. On the next slide, as we continue human resources and benefits, in terms of retirement increases for the retirement system and for the 401k system, there are some adjustments in these rates to keep in line with what the state is doing. The retirement is the mandated portion of what the state of North Carolina requires on behalf of employees that we have to contribute, going from the local government portion from 6.74 to 7.07, law enforcement from 6.77 to 7.28. For the 401k for local government, it would go from 5.03 to 5.21. For law enforcement, it would remain flat from 5% to 5%. Basically, what we're doing is making sure that the local government and law enforcement combined rates are equal at 12.28%, so that law enforcement and local government are being treated like for like. On the next slide, health insurance plan. This is actually a very good news item, and as department heads may be watching or rewatching this or hearing about this as the day and week unfolds, when we first looked at our health insurance plan, we thought that we were going to need to raise rates, both on the employee participation fee as well as the optional coverages that an employee can buy for their family, whether family coverage or employee spouse or the optional coverages. But the more we looked at it and analyzed it and looked at the numbers, we feel very confident that we can hold the plan flat and stable, and that the cost to the county, and the county is paying about $596 for each employee that is employed by the county. The employees are paying the participation fee of either $20 a month or $40 a month. It's $20 a month as long as they meet their targets, getting 6 points for the employee participation fee program in terms of educational credits, or whether they do physical activity. They can then qualify for a $20 a month fee. If they do not, then it's $40 a month. Then you can see the parent-child policy remains at $344, the employee spouse at $493, and the family policy at $596. You see a footnote there on this slide. It says when both husband and wife are employed by Pitt County, the county's contribution of $596 per month equals the cost of family coverage, and the employee only pays the individual participation fee. So in effect, if a husband and wife work for Pitt County government, they would then not, and they want to have child coverage, they would not have to pay that fee. We are going to ask that you consider stopping that practice, grandfathering those who are currently under it, and then effective July 1, that we would no longer do that practice. It's a practice that's been going on for 25 or 30 years. Honestly, we can't find anything where it's been recorded that you approved it or sanctioned it, but I think there's probably 10 employees who are taking advantage of that, and we really just want to phase that out and say anybody who's hired hereafter would not get that benefit. On the next slide, in terms of the market adjustment, we give you history. This is reflected on page 22 in your booklet of what the COLA has done through the years. And if you look at the years 2010, 11, 11, 12, and 12, 13, you can see that there was a change in the CPI of 2.6, 1.6, and 2.9 respectively. Because we were in the middle of the recession, we were not able to do anything for the employees in terms of giving them any consideration for an adjustment for a market adjustment. That was a cumulative total of 7.1%. This year, the normal benchmark we use and look at for making a recommendation to you for a COLA or a market adjustment is January to January of the federal CPI. Well, that is actually only 1.6%. I am recommending a 2% in there because we were able to within the available reoccurring revenues, do 2%. It doesn't make up for lost time of the 7.1 exactly, but at this point, again, we can only, with a structurally balanced budget, we can only budget what we can budget expenditures to meet revenues. But I think a 2% in keeping the healthcare plan costs stable and flat. The initial thought was that we were going to give maybe a 1.6 or greater and then take part of it away with the health insurance increases, but we were able to avoid that. So that's where we're at with that. On page 23 in your booklet and on the next PowerPoint slide is the merit compensation proposal. When the merit plan is up and operational like it had been 3 years prior, if an employee, once they complete their PET plan, that's the Partners for Effective Performance, if you were on the county's pay scale, increment range from 1 to 40 is basically the way it works. If you were under the mark, under the increment 17, and you had a 3.0 on your PEP plan, and it goes from 1 to 5 in terms of how you can perform, you would then be considered eligible for a merit increase of 2.4%. If you're above increment 17 on a scale of 1 to 40, and you got 3.55, again on a 1 to 5 rating scale, you could get a 1.2% increase. We haven't done that for 3 years. This will technically be the 4th year that we have not done it. But I am recommending to the board that something be put back into place to encourage employees and supervisors to continue doing performance reviews. And with that, I'm recommending that we give 16 hours of leave time if you meet those benchmarks. And that's laid out on page 23, kind of how that would unveil itself in terms of the guidelines. But basically, on the PowerPoint slide in front of you, again, it's non-monetary. It's personal leave hours. Again, it's based upon the PEP score. It's a one-time program. We're not recommending that this. Hopefully next year, if I stand before you and the tax base grows enough, maybe we'll have some money to put the dollar value back with the merit program like we've always had in the past, not including the past 3 years. So the implementation criteria would be employee who is above 17 on that 1 to 40 increment scale would get 8 hours with only a 3.0. If an employee is above 17 and they have an exceeds, that's the 3.55, they could get the full 16 hours. Any employee under increment 17 that has a 3.0 would get the full 16 hours. And we're recommending that this be, the PEPs are, the performance period is through June 30th. We start working on PEPs in July or even sooner than that. We're recommending that this be put into place. Actually, we're not going to put the hours on the books until January 16th because and the rationale for that being, if we go ahead and give it to them, the hours, let's say in September, when all the PEPs are in, if they've already got 240 hours of personal time logged and they haven't been able to use it, and we give them 16 more hours, what happens at the end of the calendar year, anything over 240 then goes to sick leave. So we thought let's make these hours effective January of 2014 and give them the full year to use the hours so they don't roll over if they're an employee that has hard time using their hours. All right, I'm rolling to the end here. The capital improvement plan is the last component of the presentation. And if you look at the top of page 24 in your binder, this is the same illustration we've used year to year. And Dwayne and I have talked about some changes for the following year for 14-15 that we want to make in the CIP. And we really want to drive another component to this. The way that this table is broke out, the top part of the met needs, the things that we are able to recommend that you budget for in the following fiscal year. The bottom part are your unmet needs, the things that we couldn't find a revenue source for. But the third component we want to add to this is to show you what it would take in terms of a revenue source to implement the projects. What revenues, whether it's a tax increase or whether it's within available revenues, whether it's using quarter-cent sales tax for appropriate projects and such. So again, on the PowerPoint slide for the top of page 24, these are the current met need projects. $750,000 to the Pitt County school system, again split between general fund appropriation and the sales tax. PCC, $75,000 for their capital, exclusively out of the sales tax. Actually, that note there needs to be a ST instead of a C, sales tax for that. The economic development projects would be $257,000 with the different incentive projects that the grants that they have scheduled to be awarded based upon the current schedule. The Pitt County Annual Vehicle Replacement Program, we are recommending that you allow us to purchase 30 new vehicles next year, and that this would be a new loan that would be unveiled, and I've got some detail on that in a moment. The Sheriff's Communication Equipment, $260,000. I'm sorry, that's EMS, $260,000 for their fleet management program for the third year of that program. And within that program, staff discussed with the EMS Oversight Committee this past week, or last week, of also revamping their fleet management program to an overall capital improvement program, whether it's defibrillators, whether it's vehicles, whether it's the backboards and generators, different things that keep coming up. There's no overall plan. There's an overall fleet management plan that has worked well. Again, this $260,000 represents the third year of that plan of either remounting trucks or buying new trucks or the combination thereof. But we'd like for the next years going out to devise a plan that's more long-range and more encompassing of all their needs. So that'll be coming forth. The next thing we talked about, $129,000 for the sheriff's communication equipment, $400,000 for the telephone system, $200,000 for the recorder, and then buildings and grounds, $70,000 for the backhoe replacement. So that totals $2,756,000 of projects that are in next year's budget, either with a recurring revenue source or a one-time revenue source. You can see the total of the unmet needs column is $10,579,332 of unmet needs that are identified on the plan. On the next PowerPoint slide, just to give you some detail about the vehicle replacement plan, we are proposing a funding strategy to basically reinstate something that we tried 3 or 4 years back. We made it the first year, then the effects of the recession hit the economy, hit local government, and we couldn't continue to make the appropriations we needed to keep on a rolling stock replacement plan. But this plan will achieve the replacement of approximately 30 vehicles every year within available capacity of monies. We would have to identify alternate funding for every third year of the plan for new vehicles. So on the next PowerPoint slide, I'm not sure if this was in your booklet, I don't believe it is. The next PowerPoint slide shows the vehicle replacement plan for next year, 13-14, shows it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years going out, and what it would take to keep this plan going. So for the first one, where it says Loan 1 coming down the left-hand column, for the $183,746, this pays off the current vehicle loan that we have out there. That's using existing dollars that are allocated as part of the current process. Loan number 2 are new dollars. That is an expansion of the budget that's being recommended before you to purchase 30 new vehicles, of which roughly probably 2/3 of those are being recommended to go to the sheriff. The other 1/3 would be distributed across the organization within the dire needs of other departments. The years 3, 4, and 5 would require an identification of new dollars in those future years as we go out. And basically, the maximum that we're recommending is 2 payments, 2 vehicle loans a year. So actually 15-16 would be a skip year in terms of purchasing vehicles, or we would potentially have 3 loans out there. So we are trying to come up with a strategy, but again, we need the tax base to grow so we have the revenues to pay for this. All right, on the next slide, I've already hit the unmet needs of what's on the remaining portion is the CIP. So with that, concludes my presentation. Again, tax rate holds at 68 cents. 2% cost of living for the for the county employees. Health plan is stable, implements a list of one-time projects, and I think those are basically the highlights.
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Thank you.
Probably the appropriate thing to do now is kind of just go down the list here and let each commissioner make his comments or ask his questions of the manager. So we will start with Mr. Hammond.
Yes, sir. Scott, this non-monetary compensation, is that what you call comp time?
No, it's personal leave. It will actually indirectly be a liability to the county on the books, because when we put those 16 hours, assuming they're able to earn them with their PEP review, we would credit them 16 hours of personal leave, which is basically vacation time. But when our goal is that they're going to use it, so then it'll come off the books once they use it. There's no budgeted cost for you to include in the budget. If they were to if we were to give them the 16 hours effective that date in January, I think it said January 16th, 2014, if they were to leave at the end of January and they hadn't taken those 16 hours off, we'd have to pay them 16 hours of leave time on top of any other balances they have as their final paycheck.
Thank you.
Mr. James?
I got so many questions, I don't know where they start from, so I'm
You know
gonna-
what our agreement was at the beginning of this
I
meeting.
know that,
Okay.
but I don't agree with the lots here. And what I want to know is, what was the budget? You know, you were saying we're spending lots, and I asked, and we got 3% more this year to spend than we've had. But yet we're borrowing a lot of money, such as on these cars and so forth. I mean, I don't believe in that kind of stuff. I think we need to pay for the things so we won't put ourselves in a bind 3 years from now.
Well,
I really do, and I think you need to look at that. I think what we've done, we're not paying our bills, and we're making more bills, Mr. Chairman. And yet, we've got 3% more money. How many millions of dollars is that?
In,
We're talking about a lot of money.
well, in the tax base,
Yeah.
it's $300 million more in the tax base.
All right, that we've increased
And that equates to about $2 million.
About $2 million
in ad valorem taxes
ad
that we
valorem.
have
Correct.
this year to spend than we did last year.
correct.
Correct.
And that's what I'm concerned with, how we are spending this money. You're saying, of course, that when we get to education, that's when I want to ask really the questions, Mr. Chairman. And to make sure, all right, out of the 30 cars, the sheriff's department, what I believe you said, get 20 of them, which is 2/3. Is that correct?
Not 19. but-
19 technically. But
Well, if they're 30, I thought, but anyway, we
Wow.
won't, that's not so important, so to speak. But I think the time that I want to ask questions is when we go to each one of those. But certainly, I'm going to come back on the lots that he had said on these particular ones. I took notice when I went through there, a lot of them had increased.
Fund balance
on it. And, right, and this extra money we're talking about, what about the fund balance? Could we increase that more than what we have? That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Coulson?
Well, a couple things. I'm a little concerned that you're fully funding the request of the public schools, and that, based on, my concern here is that arguably they've never really performed to the level that we were funding them year after year after year. That amount of money was compounded, so they're getting that money right along. And so then you come to the community colleges, which I think is one of the most important things that this county has. And then you don't meet their full needs. I'd rather take it away from the public schools and give it to community college. They are the economic changers to the county. They're educating people, re-educating people so that they can become more viable employees in the county. With the outside agencies, I thought we had an agreement when I was a commissioner before that certain things would be funded for a 3-year period, and then after that, it'd be weaned off. The fourth thing is I'm concerned because I sit on this board and have been on it for a long time. Animal control, they asked for an additional person and it appears to be denied again. The county chose, not the the county chose 20 years ago or however long ago to decide to get into the animal control business. It is about time that the county step up the plate and start to fund it adequately. It's grossly underfunded for what their mission is. And so I'm very concerned with that. If you go to page 20, as you can see where the position was denied, that's what I'm basing my,
Commissioner Coulson, we did fund them, in talking to Michelle, a part-time person as a step toward that.
okay, well, at least that's somewhat of an improvement. Anyway, I have no further comments at this point.
Yes, I like the presentation very much of the one-time cost brought out, taken out from the recurring costs, because that's always a concern, and I think it's a good way to help our citizens to understand about using money annually each year. I was happy to hear that we hope we're going to increase the fund balance again. I'm very proud of what happened last year as far as that's concerned. Just a question, the husband and wife insurance coverage, I totally understand that, and I'm assuming that if they have 2 children, each one could pick up a child if they have to pay for the family coverage, correct? Something like that later on?
Well, if you were to grandfather the current employees and they require, if 2 new employees came to Pitt County and they were married, husband and wife, as of July
Right.
1, the county would pay $596 for one, they'd pay
Right.
$596 for the other. One of the 2 of them would have to pick up the family coverage, or if they only had one kid, they'd have the parent-child policy amount at $344.
But they could split it if they wanted to, if they had,
One of them would have to pay for it.
okay,
Yeah.
I got you. And as far as the nonprofits were concerned, we have eliminated those almost completely, except, I remember we talked about the things that serve our entire community and our citizens that we can't lump together as a
Right.
county service. So I want us to continue that
There's
as
two-
far as the libraries and the art
There's
councils.
2 points on that. We used to have a $30,000 pot for the nonprofits to apply for, and they could get funding in 3, they could get a one-time funding, they could get funding that would go year to year to year over the 3 years, or they could get possibly 2-year funding. We did away with that probably 3 years ago when the recession hit. Now, the other nonprofits that are, we call affiliate agencies, or what's the other term we use? Sustaining. The sustaining, I believe, are the ones that we consider are very closely aligned to our core mission, the libraries, council on aging, services to the seniors. The affiliates, that being the libraries, the smaller libraries, the arts councils and such, those have always been on the permanent funding, even though we've cut those back in years past, and this restores some of those allocations. But that's the difference. We're not doing that $30,000 pot at this point in time.
Right, in other words, we made that decision, yes, back when, but I do remember us talking about the services to our citizens that we can't, it's sort of like community and schools. By funding them, we're able to do services that we should do countywide in the local municipalities and that sort of thing. So I'm totally in favor of us continuing to do that. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Mr. Owens?
I think that you have met your responsibility, Scott, in bringing to us a recommended proposal. I certainly have some subtractions and additions specifically that would be my preference as what you have presented, but I want to wait and hear from the presenters that we're going to have before I insert that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson?
No questions at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner McGlaughlin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Scott, I wanted to say, first of all, I think this is a bit of a good news budget. I was certainly pleased with the Pitt County School after hearing that it's ranked number 42 in the state and that we were able to continue to help our children. Certainly, I believe our children is our most important investment, and to see that this budget reflected this. Most importantly, I think that to see that the employees are now getting a 2% raise. That to me is a great news. We have, for the past 5 or 6 years, have not given them anything. And so to see this happen, I think this sends a great message to our employees, those individuals who have worked tirelessly for this county. As brought out, the ABC board continued to produce the needed revenue for this county, and we, having served on this board, and along with Glenn Webb, we are continue focusing on trying to continue to have that leverage take place. The detention center, it has it dropped? I think I read an article where it has dropped in the detainees. And I probably would ask that question to the chair. And we were talking about the opening of the new C block. I know that would cost the county an absorbent amount of money. To have that not opening now, I think reflects good. And I also think it reflects good on this county, probably on the sheriff's department, not to have as many detainees in the jail as it is now. But we'll talk about that when he comes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner McLaughlin, if I can just say on the opening of E-Block, it's about $894,000 to open E-Block. It's 17 personnel, plus all the other associated costs beyond the salary costs that would be associated with that. In terms of the population of the detention center, it 6 months of the year it's overpopulation, 6 months of the year is underpopulation, and historically the first 6 months of the year I believe is the over part. Then the last 6 months of the fiscal year it comes under. It's due to the cycle of how things, the ebb and flow of the population and the courts and how things are booked and the holidays and the seasons of the year. Probably a year from now, I'm going to project and anticipate that it'll need to be opened. And again, just to, I guess, to remind you, for a year from now, we will be looking at about a $900,000 expense, probably almost the equivalent of a penny on the tax rate to open that. And hopefully we'll have enough growth in the base of the county that we can accommodate that. But if not, then we'll have to either fund it from within or fund it through a tax increase or fund it through some source.
Okay, Commissioner Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Scott, when we look at unfunded liabilities that we'll have in the future, retirement programs is a large one. And not to affect anyone who is currently serving, but when I talk to business leaders, when I talk to people at the university, they say the current students, the 25 and unders that are going to be coming out into the workforce are not interested in pensions, that they're interested in 401k. Have we given any thought to preserving the people pension who work here now, but maybe eliminating that unfunded liability for future employees?
No, I mean, we participate as mandated by the state of North Carolina. If we have an employee who works more than 20 hours a week, I mean, 20 hours a week and then 80 hours a month. If they do that and they work more than 1,000 hours a year, because there's 2,080 hours in a quote working year, we will be fined or sanctioned by the state for not enrolling them in the. So this would be a structural change to that, but it's probably something that can be looked at. Probably something we need to talk to the state about, and probably even our legislative delegation at some point, to if we're going to look at an option to what you're saying, which, I mean, it sounds like a creative suggestion.
We reduce that unfunded liability, and maybe we could increase 401k contributions to make it more attractive to the new worker that's going to be coming out, while preserving the traditional structure that we have for those of us who are used to it and are going to be somewhere for 30 years.
Right.
Whereas you have the new employee that's not. Next, on the PATs, I know I kind of harp on this every year. Is this going to break even this year or turn a profit?
Almost break even. I think we may still have a deficit of $20,000 or $30,000, but but it's a far cry from the $440,000 that we were a year
But
ago.
almost break even, still losing money.
Well,
And how many different individuals ride it, and how much do we spend total per year? Because I didn't see that in there. I probably skipped over it because there's a lot of small numbers.
we'll have to,
Ballpark, no.
we'll bring that back to you.
Okay. And just two more quick things. I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Coulson on the school system issue, and especially when we look at our per pupil expenditures. That seems to be more of a keeping up with the Joneses number. That investment rarely, in my opinion, makes it to the classroom, where right now in Pitt County, not every student even has a school book. So my question is, where's the money that we are putting going? And from the teachers that I talked to, at least their opinion is, it's getting caught upstairs and not coming out to the classroom, and that we currently have a structure to where if you are not performing, then you're reassigned to the central office. And that's a big issue amongst teachers. They're not seeing any benefit. And when you look at per pupil expenditures, you have some school districts, I think there's one in New York that has the highest in the nation and one of the worst performing school systems, and you have another with the lowest amount and has a higher performing school system. So I don't know that that number is accurate as to the quality that we're getting out of our schools. And the last thing is, I didn't see anything about chambers of commerce. Are we going to rejoin the chambers?
Commissioner Webb, the board directed probably 2 years ago,
That's correct.
that we discontinue the chamber membership. At this point in time, there's nothing included in this budget for chamber membership unless you would, there's been I've heard some input from some board members that would like us to consider rejoining, but there's nothing in this year's budget at this point to rejoin the chamber unless you direct it.
I think it's something that we should consider. We'll discuss more as we go along, not today, but I think if we're going to be open for business, if we're going to keep pressing for major expansions, that we need to show that we not just support our big box industries, but that we also support our small businesses and in our small towns and municipalities. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
Very good, thank you. I have just a couple of observations and a couple of very quick questions. My observations is, number one, I was very pleased to hear you use those terminologies, base budget and right-sizing. That has to be our foundation from this point on, and I appreciate you doing that. The other thing on page 10 in the book, where you were talking about the one-time items, I guess I was surprised to see, and I know it's small, $2,000 for office furniture. With the right sizing and not hiring, I'm surprised that we need to go out and buy furniture. So let's just make sure that we need to buy furniture and that we do not have excess furniture around that we could use. On the library funding on page 15, all of those libraries that we are funding there, all of them are part of the Shepherd Memorial System, with the exception of Farmville and Fountain.
The, remind me here,
I think
the Winterville
and Bethel
and Bethel
are the only ones that
are
tied.
administrated.
Yeah, they're part of the Shepherd
Shepherd
Memorial
Memorial,
System,
correct.
yes. Is Bethel, isn't Bethel also part of it?
Correct.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
But
Aiden-
is Fountain and Grifton part of the Shepherd
They're not-
Memorial
they're-
System?
they're
So there are
independent.
3 of them that are not part of the Shepherd Memorial System.
Or 4 of them.
four.
4. Aiden, Farmville, Fountain, Griffin.
Okay, Aiden is not either.
Or
I'll see.
independent.
Okay, fine, thank you. One observation where you talked about on page 19 that the 4 or 5 positions that we're going to be, you were proposing that they be downgraded. I would also like to point out that even though they would be downgraded, there's no reduction in their pay.
That's
They
correct.
would maintain that
They
same
maintain their pay. New
Okay.
hires would be hired into the lower rate.
Very good. On the Blue Cross Blue Shield, the health program, I had heard that the incentive program for healthy eating and exercise was going to be taken out of that program. Is that a correct statement?
Let me tell you what's going on with that. Right now, the employees, there's 2 different programs. One is the physical activity incentive program, where county employees can earn $25 per quarter if they will log through the Blue Cross Blue Shield Blue Points website when they walk or play basketball, swim, any cardiovascular type physical fitness. If you'll do that, I believe it's 5 days a week for 30 minutes or 3 days a week for 50 minutes. The idea is to get 150 minutes per week. So if you do that, you log it in the Blue Cross Blue Shield system. You then submit that. Well, with Blue Cross Blue Shield, you can actually probably earn more than $25 a quarter. When you get so many points with them, I think it's maybe 2,000 points or 4,000 points, you can pull down a gift card within the Blue Cross Blue Shield website for a restaurant or for Walmart, or you can donate your money to charity. Normally it's $25 that you're pulling down. Blue Cross Blue Shield is discontinuing that as part of their website plan design. They say that the participation rate of all the people across North Carolina within their plan, if they've got, I don't know how many millions of lives they cover, but let's say they cover 1 million hypothetically, only about 100,000 or 150, 200,000 people actually utilize the Blue Points or that website. So as of June 30th, or actually July 1, that will no longer be an option that will be out there. We use that tool within the Blue Cross Blue Shield website to log our points for our plan. We have our employees go in there, print off their activity logs, submit them to the health department, because within our organization, on a quarterly basis, if you will exercise and get the 50 minutes, the 3 days at 50 minutes or 5 days at 30 minutes, we will pay the employees $25 a quarter. We're going to continue that. What we're going to do in-house, MIS through Mike Taylor is writing a computer program where the employees can log in their physical activity, physical fitness experiences, so that we'll have that printout again. But we're not, I guess what the employees is going to be losing is the opportunity to pull down a gift card through Blue Cross Blue Shield. We're not going to replicate that.
So the county is developing a program, but Blue Cross Blue Shield is eliminating that program.
Right.
So what Blue Cross and Blue Shield is doing is penalizing the good habits of the few for the bad habits of the many, which I think is poor policy. But that's Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Agreed.
The one other observation on that merit compensation proposal, first of all, I think that's a great idea, but you said we had not done anything in the last 3 years. We did grant the day off at Christmas last year.
True.
Which is very similar to what this proposal is.
Everybody got that, no matter.
Yeah, sure. Very good. Okay, any further discussion, questions?
Why yet that downgraded? Scott, that reclassification study did not cause any employer to receive less money, did it?
Correct, it did not. It did not.
Huh?
It did not.
Jimmy, the one thing you're forgetting on this exercise, isn't pounds considered? That person can put anything he wants.
Well,
but results, what results are you getting?
It's an honor system.
That ain't what tends Blue Cross is
Well, I
right
disagree
there.
with you, because have you ever participated in the program?
I don't need to.
I participated, and I think it's a great incentive, and I hate that we're losing that.
You don't need to.
Anyway,
I get enough.
Yes, Commissioner Johnson.
I will make one comment after hearing the other commissioners. I serve as liaison to the public schools, and I truly believe that the Board of Education is making a strong effort to do the best they can with the resources that they have. And Commissioner Webb, I don't know of any cases where employees that can't perform are reassigned to the upper floor of this building.
See me on the break.
Okay, any additional comments, questions?
Chairman
We will
Garris.
now, yes.
Can I just make one comment on the percent increase for the Pitt County school system versus over the community college? And Dwayne, correct me if I'm wrong here. I think we said for the Pitt County school system it was about a 2% increase, but then for the community college it was about a 4% increase.
4.7.
I realize the dollars are different, but the percentage, the school system is getting a 2% increase, the community college is getting 4% increase, even though the community college is only getting half of what they had requested in my recommendation.
Right.
Okay.
But as compared to their budget this year, they do have a larger proportionate increase.
Correct.
In their current funding.
Any additional questions or comments? If not, we'll take a 15-minute break, and then we will hear from our sheriff. Welcome back to our budget workshops. We will now hear from our sheriff, Sheriff Neil Elks.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. It seems like it's been a year since we've been back up here fighting it out, but let me assure you that this year's budget workshop, compared to last year, went very well. And the manager and I and Dwayne have gotten together and agreed on some recommendations that he's going to propose to you guys for the budget. It's been a tough year. With the budget cuts we had last year, we suffered a lot, but we've been able to manage our manpower, manage our equipment and our money, and I'm glad to say we made it so far. But like the old saying, how long can you keep pulling that rubber band without it breaking? Hopefully this year we're going to see some relief throughout the whole entire county, and that's good for the county employees. But basically want to go through and do a quick rundown of what we do. Our responsibilities, I know you've heard this before, we'll run back through them again. We're a 24-hour-a-day agency, 365 days a year. We're the ones that work during the holidays, nighttime, where everybody else is enjoying Christmas and 4th of July, we always having to work. Our main goals is to protect life and property, respond to every citizen's call for help. We task our employees to treat all citizens with diligence and fairness, conduct a thorough investigation to bring justice for all our victims we encounter. We hold prisoners for our state and federal courts. Our staffing, we have approximately 331 employees today. Our sheriff has on the law enforcement side, we have 142 employees. Presently, we have 9 telecommunicators, 14 support staff, 118 sworn officers on the law enforcement side. In detention facilities, we have 180 employees, 4 maintenance and mechanic people. We have 5 deputies that work out there, and they generally work in the intake section. 7 support, a total of 164 detention officers. School resource officers, we have approximately 9 of those at this time. We have 1 jail coordinator that works in the district attorney's office. His job is very important to us. He lines up transports and keeps the people in and out of jail as fast as possible. Some of our budget highlights we would like to talk about today is our courthouse security, replacement of our aged equipment, and hiring of 1 sworn staff. The manager recommended that we get 1 sworn deputy sheriff to work the metal detector. I think last budget y'all approved for the upgrade of the last meeting y'all had, the upgrade of the metal detector there. That was greatly well over needed. And this year, hopefully you'll see some security plans put in place, some recommendations that we had last year from the North Carolina Sheriff's Association. They came in and did a courthouse security assessment. A lot of areas we were in real good shape. The areas they're concerned about is the metal detector and the flow in and out of the courthouse. Those that frequent the courthouse know that any given day we have a large number of people, sometimes 700, sometimes 1,000 people a day. And at the end of the day, we allow to have several thousand go in and out of the metal detector. So with the awareness of what goes on in our country on a daily basis, I think it was right for us to be prepared to deal with situations as that and protect our county employees as much as possible. Communications, speak about that for a minute. We have an aging phone system there. When we actually put the communications in, I'm told that the system that was put in there came from the, I believe it was the health department. Is that correct? It was a mental health, an old system they had, and it was put in there. It's done pretty good so far, but we're not able to keep up with the some of the demands. One of the biggest things that causes the problem is being able to the phone system's compatible with the radio. If anybody's ever dispatched or known anybody that dispatches, you want a headset where you can talk on the headset and the radio and the telephone all at one time. Now we have to deal with a telephone, deal with a microphone, and try to tell the person you're talking on the radio. The way that system's designed, you mash the button, the person never hears you talking on the radio. You can continue doing your conversation, dispatching your cars. And in a recording system we have, it's not up to par. The recording system is not recording the phone calls the way it should. several reasons. It's safety for us and us being able to go back and play and listen to that call. And then also under the public information law, we have to produce that phone call if asked from the news meeting. As many of you know, the county is going to a 700 radio system. And that's causing us some problems, difficulties. We're having to phase in some equipment for us to be able to communicate with them. Our system in law enforcement is on the 800 Viper system. The 700 system is a standalone system owned by the county. So we're having problems listening and hearing the transmission. So now we're forced to start preparing ourselves to get a radio system that we can hear both frequencies. Now we have to buy a radio that copies 700 and 800 and talks on both. So those radios are quite expensive. I think they're about $5,000 a piece. So we're trying to buy, I think, 4 or 5 this year. Then we also have some upgrades that we have to budget for on the Viper system. It's a phrase they all use, the P25. It's an upgrade system. Please don't ask me to explain it all to you, but it's something to do with the transmission receiving and codes throughout the state system. But it's a very expensive upgrade that we have to do, and it costs a couple $100 per unit. Every time they touch one, they have to do a flash drive on it, and it puts the data in it that the new system is going to require. And I think that's something mandated by law, so we really don't have a lot of choice. We have to keep up with that. And anytime you got any questions, feel free. I'll stop. I'll be glad to sip on my coffee, so give me a break. So, our workload. Run through quickly. We responded to over 12,500 calls for service last year from our citizens. We did over 73,000 business checks. That's ones that we recorded on our computer. Probably more than that we didn't record. But every time we go up and check a business at night or daytime, we record that on our computer. So if there's any questions about us checking that building or for investigative purposes, did we see anybody up there? That's the reason for that. And the store owners often like to know that we're checking their business, so we'll send them a report from time to time, let them know we're checking their businesses. We've had over 6,300 reports of criminal activity. That's actually a 17% increase of calls, any calls. Actually, our criminal acts are down 6% from 2011. You know, everybody hears Part 1, Part 2 crimes, but actually our Part 2 crimes are down. It looks like our number's going to come in between 12 and 13%, and that's really good for what we've had to deal with this year as far as equipment, manpower, and stuff like that, to still be able to function and lower our crime rate down. That's something I really like to pat my men on the back for. They've done an excellent job. All our averages of solve rate is above the national average. I think we had like a 40% solve rate. I think the national average is less than 12%. Our arrest rate is up, so we've really done really good. We processed over 25,300 civil papers. We all know the fee on that is $30 a paper, so that's a good income. And we all know by serving these papers and having them served on time, people that own a lot of property, rental property, don't mind taking the papers out. If they know they invest the $100 for the cost of court and the processing fee, that the sheriff's going to serve the paper and the person's going to be either moved on or evicted. They don't mind taking the papers out. So that's a great source of income, but we have to provide an excellent service to let them realize that that by taking out the paper, then we'll get it served for them. We've processed over 150 employment applications this year. With agency as large as ours, we constantly have turnover. We constantly have just because we process your application, it's a real intense investigation. It takes a long time. You know, you give us references and then we find 20 on our own that you didn't give us about. So it takes time and money to do that. Everybody that applies for a job don't get a job, but then training standards requires us to have certain certification background things that we can meet, and a lot of times that knocks people out. But anyway, we processed over 150 applications this year. We received over 2,900 applications for gun permits. You've all been hearing about that in the news, and I spoke to you guys about it several times. That's a 44% increase. Concealed carry, we've done over 1,400 applications for concealed carry. That's another 43% increase. That's $35 per application that we're allowed to keep on that for the 1,400. That's one of the justifications that we've requested for an additional clerk to be put at the front desk to handle the processing of that. Overall response time is 20 minutes. That's from the time the phone rings to the time we get there. 44 minutes average time spent on a scene per call. Our response time to urgent calls, assaults, is generally around 13 minutes. Breaking ins in progress is 7 minutes. Fight or some type of dispute is 7 minutes. Domestic assaults average around 10. And that basically fluctuates with your time, your number of people you have working, the sections we have working. So we're trying to get to a minimum staff where we have approximately, I'd love to have 10 a night out there, but sometimes we're hard to meet that when we have 13 on a shift. Some of our shifts are running short now. When time you cycle vacation, holidays, time out, it's hard to keep your minimum staffing out there. Some of the things we've done for crime prevention incentives. We have a summer camp program. The last couple of years, we've done 40 kids on average. I think this year is going to be in Bethel. Is that correct? Yeah. Last year we did Grimeston. First year we did County Home Road. Okay, we've had 2 Citizens Academies this year. We have approximately 40 citizens that are attending that. We have one running right now. Citizens' feedback on that is great. The citizens love to come in and watch what we do, and we walk them through different departments we have, and they really get to enjoy that and get a bird's eye view of the things we deal with. We've increased our volunteers, non-emergency tasks. We've had over 2,400 hours logged in. Increase of 5 new community watch programs out in our community, and that's where they go into your neighborhood and we organize a community watch and get you to be aware of the concerns in your neighborhood and watch out for the bad guys. Increasing the efficiency in public safety. We've been able to add 15 printers in our cars at no cost. And to answer, you're probably saying, what in the world is that for? Basically, our e-citations, electronic citations, or now you can print them in the car. When we get a warrant now, everything is electronic. We have to download it electronically. We print it in the car. We can hand it to the person. We can carry it to the magistrate's office. Also helps us being able to get our NC wear warrants out, CJ leads, and stuff like that. And we actually got that through, I think it was Department of Justice gave us to that by on electronic monitoring. E-citation. We've used strategy patrols and checkpoints and result in apprehension of fugitives. Been able to get a lot of our outstanding warrants down in the past. Even in the early times when I was a deputy, nothing for me to carry 150 warrants around just myself, and I think we have less than 100 ourselves right now throughout the whole department. Through the electronic version, once a warrant is signed, it automatically flashes on the screen. The deputy can serve them in much as 10, 15 minutes after they're actually printed by the magistrate. Development of internal training advisory committee to streamline training throughout the agency is one good thing we've done. Is where we have a training committee now, and it helps us understand and meet the needs of the department. We've consolidated equipment use under one unit, resulting in cost saving throughout bulk order and different things, where we've found out that everybody don't need a fingerprint machine, everybody don't need this type of equipment. We're able to utilize surveillance equipment, electronic equipment, radio equipment, and then we also do bulk ordering. When we buy stuff, we try to shop around and buy it to best save the county taxpayers. We've consolidated our hiring and training and recruitment division, and basically you start here, you end up here. If you come in, we do your backgrounds, we do your testing, we do your training, we do all issuing uniforms all in one division. Before, everybody had a little job, a little piece of the pie. It makes it simpler when you, like I said, you start here, you get your uniforms here, you do your testing here, and when you end up, this is where the last place you go before you leave. It's really streamlined that and saved a lot in manpower. In partnership with the Pitt County Schools, we have a security task force that we use, and we're always aware of our readiness and meet our training needs. We continue providing active shooter training in the schools and our staff. We work with the school staff and the Greenville Police Department providing rapid deployment in our schools. We've actually just recently purchased some more equipment. Actually bought rifles for our school resource officers to have in their vehicles in case they encounter a situation they're there by themselves. A lot of times these situations are going to be, if the officer's not in the area, that school resource officer is going to have to be one of the best highly trained officers to respond to emergency. in the early days, we always put a person out there that was getting ready to retire, or he thought he was going to last 4 years of his life. But I'm telling you, the dynamics of the School Resource Officer program is turning around. These guys are on the front line every day, and they had to be prepared and be well equipped and know their students, and they really do a great job interacting with their students and the staff and the school body itself. We partnership with Invited Medical Center. This year we were able to receive money where we've got 52 AEDs to put in our patrol cars. Dr. March, I saw he was up here last meeting. He's been a great help in us doing this. He's also taught our officers medical trauma training, and basically we go out on the scene. We've developed a little kit we have in every car where if an officer was to get shot, he can put a tourniquet on himself. He has some gauze that his partner himself can apply. It immediately stops the bleeding. Our efforts are to try to save an officer's life or a citizen's life until we can get some help there to them. All right, detention center. Excuse me, I have allergies throbbing on my mouth. It's so dry I can't hardly speak. We implemented a new lighting system resulting in decrease of energy costs. We implemented the new plumbing fixtures to decrease the water flow. Installed new camera systems in the A and B block, resulting in increased safety for both detention officers and the inmates. We also renegotiated our food service contract. We're down to $1.25 per meal per day with no decrease of calorie intake. We've been able to shift some things around and change the hot meal to lunchtime instead of supper time. With that being done, you're able to send the airmark person home earlier. We did away with styrofoam cups, and we got the washable cups. That's going to save us a tremendous amount of money after the end of the year. You'd be surprised how much that saves. Little things that our jail staff's constantly doing to keep the costs down. My hat's off to the major and his staff for doing such a good job. Continuing financial challenges, low inventory of vehicles. I think the manager's recommendation is that we get 19 of the 39 vehicles needed. That's we're very thankful for that. We'll get rid of the 19 worst cars we have. I think last time we carried cars off the record, had to haul them off because they were barely running and couldn't get them cranked back up. But it put us in a better shape getting 19 cars. We're very thankful for that, and we're thankful for the manager's recommendations on that. Increased need for crime prevention awareness material and numerous of community events, recruiting fairs. This is where we go out and do the crime watch programs. We provide signs for the community and stuff like that. Also have materials for the kids at the summer camps and youth fairs. Increasing security at the courthouse, I spoke about that. Management of the inmate population. I think today I have 498. The maximum capacity, we're at 500. Functionable capacity, we're about 25 over our functionable capacity, and he says he has about 12 on the floor right now sleeping. So we're looking at the numbers and trying to monitor and really keep the numbers down. I brought this before you 6 months ago. I think we just need to keep it in front of us. We can look at it again in 6 months and see where we're at. I just ask you to be open-minded about it and be sensitive with me on the needs. If we can try to make it last a while longer, then that's what we'll do. But I just want you to be aware that I'm very concerned about it. I think we can stretch this out a little longer and make it last a little longer if we can. But if I see that it becomes officer safety concerns, and I'd like to come back before you and ask you to make you aware of that and take any recommendations you may have on that. Hopefully this year we may see an increase of our federal inmates. One of our problems has been the federal magistrate hasn't been in place, and I understand he's getting ready to be back in place. It was due to a death. They're getting ready to make a new appointment, is what my information is. So hopefully we'll see an increase of our feds. Just be mindful, and we've talked to the manager about it. I don't want to be in a situation as the count starts going up, we can't take them because we still have a capacity. But where we at now, I think we're okay. We just need to be mindful of our inmates and be careful. If I come up and got 30 or 40 more inmates, then I'll be back to talk to you about that. I'd like to thank you for your support. Like I said earlier, it's been a pleasant year working through the budget. I know things are tight across the county. I think throughout the whole county government, people are feeling a little bit of relief. We're glad. I know it's been talk about a raise for our employees. I encourage you to do that if you can. county employees, and especially our sheriff's employees. They work really hard. They work 24 hours a day. Anything you can do for them would be greatly appreciated. I can't pull with so many rabbits out of a hat every year to keep them motivated, but they don't complain, but I promise you a raise would really put a high step in their walk. Thank you for your time. Appreciate you letting us come up and present to you. And this time, I got any questions, I'll be glad to take them.
Okay, we'll go down the line. I'm going to start on this end this time. Commissioner Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, we appreciate everything you're doing, and especially what your staff's doing.
Thank you.
You do, too. As the SRO situation, has there been any attempts to expand that? Are there any monies out there that you've been able to identify?
Right after the Sandy Hook shooting, there was a lot of talk. We met with the school board about looking at some opportunities. We all heard talk of money coming available. We didn't know if it would come through us or the school system. There actually is a grant out there right now that we can apply for. I think it's up to 6 officers in the COPS grant. It's a 25% match. It's good for 3 years. We've basically, and I've talked to the manager about it, we basically have looked at getting the school board to partnership with us, and basically where they're at right now, I don't know if they're ready to make that commitment. The fact that their superintendent's leaving, but I think it's something that we need to look at, and if it's an opportunity to get 6 school resource officers, and that would be basically what they'll be designated for. I couldn't, and the reason I don't want their partnership is 2 things: is pay the 25% match and pick them up at the end of the 3 years. I don't want to hire them and then not have a job 3 years from now.
I don't think things are going to get any better over the 3 years. No. We're going to need them. But you said that they're posturing as if they're not willing to do that?
Well,
I'm not asking you to speak for them.
Yeah, it's just right now they're not willing to get on board with, so I'll just leave it at that.
I've reached out to them as well. I'm getting the same response that the sheriff is getting. I think they're saying with the new superintendent search going on and their funding in flux, that they pretty much want to put this on hold, but there's an application deadline that the sheriff and I have talked about that the county would need to, the sheriff's office would need to go ahead and apply for those. Again, it is, like the sheriff said, it's 75% funding for 3 years. The county would have to pick them up 100% for the 4th year. Then thereafter, if we keep them, I mean, that's the county's prerogative. But I think it's very important if this kind of funding is out there, and with the Sandy Hook type threats that are out there, that I really don't see how we could not look at this opportunity and try to secure this funding.
I don't see how we can wait, especially concerning our more rural schools where your response time is going to be longer if there's not an SRO already there.
Agreed.
What is the deadline, I'm sorry, for the grant?
It's like 2 weeks.
2 weeks from now? Okay.
The
Thank you.
superintendent will be here this week to present, so maybe the board may want to ask her.
I mean, if I can get, I've got my writer in position to write it. We're gathering the data as if we want to do it, but I just need the blessing from whoever to pursue it, because I think it's a great opportunity to meet the needs, and then basically, the school should be, I hope, would be very excited about it.
I would hope so. As far as other than expanding that, has there been any? Have your officers been requested to do safety inspections of the schools and give recommendations?
We do that automatically. We do that, and several programs we've done in the last couple of months. We go around. Electronic monitoring guys stop in and do a school walkthrough. The schools are really appreciative of that. Section cars go in on at least a weekly basis, walk in, be seen, do lunch at the school with the kids, be seen. I think it's very important that we pursue and look for the placement of officers in the schools. And my recommendation when we met with superintendent versus Greenville, my problem is the location of the school. Some schools may take me 20 minutes to get to, although it's not a problem school. But in Belleville area, if a deputy's not right there, it could be a problem. But it's not a problem school. But if an incident was to occur there, I need a deputy there.
Absolutely.
And so that's some of my concerns are quite different than what Greenville Police Departments are. But their response time is not a factor for them as it would be for me.
What about, has there been any consideration to maybe putting some safes in the offices of the SROs to get them quicker access to long guns?
Yeah, that's been some consideration, yeah.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate everything you're trying to do. I would just like to say, just for everybody's benefit, I don't think that we can afford not to act on school safety especially when there's 75% money out there. And it almost feels like to not do that, to me, it seems like we're going to send a message that it can't happen here. And I don't want to get caught.
How much money is it?
I know you don't believe that. I'm saying that when there's a 75% grant out there that your people are ready for, and that you're already writing and preparing and can implement, that the other side of the partnership needs to adopt the attitude that it can happen here and needs to start moving. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, somebody's got to pick up.
Sheriff, I'd like to certainly congratulate you and commend you for the job well done for this county. My questions sort of piggyback on what Commissioner Webb was saying. I'm just in strong belief that all of our children in Pitt County should be protected. Now, I don't know what we talk about school resource officers and the major schools are all the major schools protected with a resource officer. I'm sure that all
The high schools are.
All the high
High
schools.
schools and it trickles down to middle schools, yeah.
On middle school.
Not
Now,
all of them.
now, what, if any, kind of relationship do you have with the Greenville Police Department? I know most of them that's the resource officers are with the Sheriff Department. Do you have?
The ones in the rural areas in the county are. The city of Greenville has their own school resource officers, all of them except for one, and we share one at Southwest Elementary, I believe it is.
Now, I understand the difference between the county and the city, but when it comes down to our children's safety, why can't the city and county work in harmony together to make sure all of our major schools are protected? I mean, I'm throwing it out.
I agree. I think we should. There should be
I mean,
no question about it.
I mean, you ain't
We've
about,
already had the early warning signs. Let's don't wait till it happens here. Let's say this is what happened. This is what we prevented. We may never know what we prevented.
I don't know, Mr. Manager, what we can do, but I think that if that relationship is open, I think some kind of way that we ought to look into trying to get this as open enough to have both our city and county law enforcement step up in the plate, because it's not about them, it's about our children. So thank you, what you do.
Sir.
That's all right.
Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Sheriff, for what you and your many officers are doing on behalf of the citizens of Pitt County. But with regard to school safety, I don't want anybody to get the idea that your office and the Board of Commissioners, or your office and the superintendent of schools and the members of the school board are not working together. I don't want anybody to get the idea we aren't working together, and I would appreciate everything you can do to help us to get the idea to the public that we are working together. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Owens.
I appreciate the Sheriff's bringing this information to us, and I believe we can work with Scott to implement whatever we need to support him.
Very good. Commissioner Ward.
Thank you again, as we've all said, for your presentation this morning and your willingness to work with us and to the benefit of the citizens as well as your department. As far as the grant, the SRO grant for maybe the elementary schools, I would hope we would push forward with that, but I really think that it might behoove somebody, maybe you, Dr. Johnson, since you serve on the education, the board as far as our liaison is concerned, that it might be, I don't see why we have a superintendent in place who has already voiced that she's very interested in it. So maybe she can, when she comes to us, I don't know what day she's coming, I haven't looked, that maybe she could have already spoken to the board about this, because, you don't want to lose it, and you don't want to have to do away with something that you've shown as a need for us to come up with the money to match. So, you know, I think that would be a good idea, but I think that's something we've got to do. Thank you
And the
again.
school board is very concerned about the security. I think the biggest thing is just where they at right now with the transition.
Yeah,
You
I
know, they're very-
understand that, but we, you know,
They know the needs as well.
but we do have a superintendent in place right now.
But this
working
grant's
for
gonna be
us,
very
so-
competitive and, you know,
Yes.
but I think we need to get our name out front as fast as we can.
Exactly. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want anybody to get the misunderstanding that I'm a member of the school board. I don't have a vote. I'm not even given an opportunity to speak to the school board. And there are some people who believe otherwise, but I just wanted to make it clear.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Coulson.
How much money are we talking about with this SRO program? I mean, how do we consider it when we don't know what 25% of what is?
Depending on the number of positions, the average salary and benefits is about 54,000, so it would be 25% of that.
Talk about $75,000, $80,000
for 6
More than a
positions.
teacher.
per year for the first 3 years, then 100% for that fourth
I
year.
understand.
If you got the 6 positions, you may not get but 2, you know, the
Yeah.
max is 6. I would
Okay.
go for the
All right.
max.
But if
so-
the school would pick up, you know, the 25% or part of it, you know, partner with the county, it wouldn't be 25% county. It'd be 12.5% for the county and 12.5% for the schools.
It's all county dollars
It's,
at the end of the day.
But, you know,
Okay, thanks. One other thing, and you didn't speak to it, but I noticed in the paper for quite some time now, one of the things that your department has been doing is going after deadbeat dads, or should I just say deadbeat parents for non-support. I think it's wonderful. With Pitt County having the dubious distinction of being second in the nation, I understand, for 69% of out-of-wedlock births, it just makes one wonder, 10 years from now, when this fatherless generation is of age to do crime, you know, to begin being influenced by gangs and others, where's this county going to be? This is a blasted embarrassing thing, and anybody in the county that doesn't look at it as being embarrassing, I don't understand. But anyway, I want to commend you for going after them. I hope you'll continue to do it.
We start a campaign today at 11 o'clock, so, in comparing notes real quickly to last year's, they said, we don't have as many as we did last year. I said, that's good, because we're doing our job.
Mr. James?
Yes, I look at it different than every one of you. I was a classroom teacher for 35 years, so I've been there. I was in the Army under combat. I've been there. Everybody you have won't shoot somebody. Did you know that? You might not believe me. But when you're up there and you're throwing that rifle on somebody, it's a little different.
That's right.
That was proven out in Texas somewhere when this policeman had a gun, and it came out he had the gun on the guy, and he admitted that he could not shoot him. All right, but this is the way I look at it. That guy's going to do the damage. If he's got 3 miles to go, he's going to do the damage before he ever gets that gentleman. And it ain't going to do. The person that's in that school, that teacher, they're the ones that's going to be on the fine line. Because that teacher is going to try to defend those kids. Right then, it's been proven, time and time again. If I was in that school, where would I go? I'd go there to get him. And you got thousands of teachers who would do the same thing. And they don't have minutes. Did you know that? You just got seconds to act and to take in to do something. And as far as that, I think you're on the right, as I was reading this, preparing the personnel that you have that is there that can act to save those kids. And you're not going to do it by sending a policeman 5 miles. I don't care how good he is. All right, the next thing, and I believe that very strongly, by the way. Very strongly. All right, the next thing is that communication to me. You said that yours, you're on the 700, but the county is on the 800 system. Is that correct?
Vice versa. We own
It's
the
by-
800,
You're on the
county's
8, the
700.
county's on the 7. All right, now, this is the thing, I was in the flood. The biggest thing, and I have said this time and time again, communication was the key to it for our people. And we did not have it, and it looks like we still, don't have it. If 2 departments is in Pitt County and they can't communicate, what is going wrong?
Mr. James?
Yeah.
The new radio system is designed to communicate with back and forth. It does communicate.
Well,
He's on P25, which is the State Highway Patrol system, which the former sheriff had sought grant funding and build up that P25 system, which I guess is the 800 system, compared to the 700 system we bought. The 700 system is able to integrate and talk back and forth. Both systems can talk back and forth
all right,
in
well,
talk groups.
Mr. Brown, I want to know this. How many systems do we have in Pitt County that is not compatible, say, to Pitt County?
Within Pitt County government, we either have the P25, which is the sheriff's system, or the new 700 radio system. Now, other law enforcement jurisdictions, I could not tell you. We have invited them to come and piggyback along with us, but that's their decision within their own jurisdiction.
All right, are we on the same link with the National Guard? Because that's who we had out in our area.
I would have to find out. I mean,
Well, see, we're spending millions of dollars.
this system should be able to communicate with other systems like that, but I can contact Mr. Lee and ask him.
Yeah, because, I told you, the Navy pilot came into my house. He tried to communicate. He couldn't communicate with nobody.
And
But
they carried you to top, and then
Yes, they did. But he couldn't communicate with nobody except the Navy. I couldn't believe it. And from what I gather, it's the same doggone stuff that it is now. So, well, anyway, I still think we got problems there, and we need to be able to communicate with the Highway Patrol, the Sheriff's Department, the Police Department.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, and this pilot, he said, Mr. James, what it is, we're all jealous of one another. I said, this jealousy business is out. I said, you're talking about people that need help.
Well, the Viper system is set up for major disasters throughout the state, and everybody that's on the Viper system can talk within that group, whether it be a highway patrol or Buncombe County Sheriff's Office would come in here.
Yeah, and we had some of them.
event channels that we can all go to.
Yeah, we had some of them out there with roadblocks from other counties.
The 700 system is a little different than that.
But
And I
the
see-
Viper is the P25 or the 800 system he's talking about, and it does have interoperability with our new radio system. They do talk to each other.
And if this happens again, I might not be around, but our best line of communication was a cell phone at that particular time. We could talk and we sent people to get out of houses on the cell phone more than anything else. All right, but the next thing that I wanted to hit on, because I was really on the last sheriff about this, they had this school kids and the sheriff's department, they had a big tent out there. They had lots more sheriffs out there than they did students. Did you know that?
Yes, sir.
And I complain about that, but why not, instead of using the schools, why, and I really thought of, why not use the Boys and Girls Clubs to take and communicate and use them as a source, because they are at those Boys and Girls Club every day. Guarantee you out there right now, you're going to find the people out there. And every afternoon, there are a lot of them. School buses roll in and out. And of course, you know that. And now it's completely different. You don't have school now 9 months. You got it 12 months. They're eating out there year round now. Did you know that? Some of you do and some of you don't, but they are. And of course, that's the way life is, I guess. But anyway, I want to say this. I appreciate all that you all do. I really do. I know it's hard. And I know you got those hard-headed people like me out there. But anyway, I thank a lot of all of you. And I appreciate what you do. I really do. and you got going to ever catch all the crooks.
I appreciate it. If everybody, your hard-headedness, if that's all I had to worry about, that'd be the last thing I had to
Yeah,
worry about.
all right, but anyway.
I appreciate you,
thank
Mr. James.
Yeah, thank you for
Thank you.
coming up here with us.
Commissioner Hammond?
Yes, sir. Sheriff, I'd like to commend you and your staff for the work that y'all doing. And you got a little lady that's a detective down there, Miss Dance, she the other day went to a case where there had been a break-in, and before she left the neighborhood, she had just about solved 5 or 6 break-ins from them same prints. And one of the stops that she made, the lady's mother, personal friend of mine, and they were visiting at the center the other day, and she told me to, if I ever saw her, to tell her thank you. I said, I'll probably see her boss one day next week, and I'll tell him to thank her for you. The Mazels in Western Pitt County.
Yep, I remember the case. Thank you, and I'll make sure I
But
tell.
that 5 or that 6 break-ins that she saw from them same prints.
That's generally the problem when we catch one, we can usually link them to 2 or 3 others, and that's generally
Right.
what they're doing. That's why we target to get them on the first or second one. Don't wait till there's about 20 of them. Thank you. for
Okay,
that.
thank you very much. Again, I would like to extend my appreciation for what you and
Thank
your
you, Mr. Garris.
organization is doing for supporting the citizens of our community. Let me ask you one thing for clarity, and then I have one comment and a question. On the workload, you said that you reported over 6,300 reports of criminal activity, which was a 17% increase, but then criminal acts were down 6%. That seems to be inconsistent with my limited understanding.
Let me see if I can explain that. That would be your overall crimes. We have different classification, like your breaking in, larceny, murders, and stuff like that. That's the area we're down in. We may pick up the workload in other areas, animal complaints, calls for service, whatever else we have to answer during that time.
Okay, okay.
So in other words,
the
our
criminal
calls-
activity and the criminal acts are 2 different things.
Those are
Yes,
major crimes, aren't they?
Yes,
Sheriff?
sir. We're talking about
Okay,
part one
fine,
major
okay,
crimes.
fine. That clears
That's the
that
ones
up.
that, like your robberies and your violent assaults and homicides. Luckily, we ain't had homicide this year. That's great. So last year we had 4. And by this time, we'd already had 3. But so I feel like we're making the right direction.
Very good. Thank you. One other question. One of the biggest issues during our budget cycle last year was the cars. You know, you emphasized you had deputies out there running 100 miles an hour on cars that were not safe.
Right.
Now, this past year, you were able to get 19, 20 new cars?
Yes, sir. I
Okay.
think y'all bought 12 and we bought 9.
Okay, very good. How many of those were actually assigned to patrolling deputies, of those 21 cars?
Probably 12 to 13.
12 or 13? Well, where were the others assigned? I mean, I was thinking that
Narcotics
patrol
was the
the
biggest
high-
bulk.
Excuse me?
Narcotic officers were the biggest ones, and the asset forfeiture money is what paid for those.
So they are they high speed also? Do they
Yes,
have
sir.
high speed percent?
They were actually used vehicles.
I didn't understand that. Say that.
They were, the ones we bought for the narcotics officers were used vehicles.
So those new cars we bought last year, some of them were new,
No,
were
sir.
used?
The 12
We
that,
got A. We bought A and they bought 11.5.
The vehicles we purchased were new vehicles. He used drug asset seizure dollars to buy other vehicles, which I think he bought some used vehicles, but ours were the new ones.
And
Oh,
the new ones
okay.
all went to patrol.
yeah, all the new
So
cars
the
that
20,
you guys
the 20
bought.
to 21 vehicles that you got last year, only about half of them were actually new. Is that
Well,
right?
No, let me clear that up. The 12, I think you designated, what, 11 and a half?
11
And we pay for the other half. Everybody gonna say how you pay for a half, but it was for his equipment and stuff like that. So we'll just use the figure 12 cars that the county funded last year.
Correct.
All went straight to patrol.
They were
marked
all new.
patrol cars. And then the narcotic vehicles were such bad shape, we replaced those guys, their vehicles. I think we bought some of those. And then actually one was a lease vehicle that we had been leasing with a Toyota, I don't want to say the vehicle, but anyway, it was a vehicle that was used undercover, and I think we could buy a vehicle, in our opinion, was worth $20,000. We paid, what, $10,000 for it? So we actually bought that and put it in our detective division, freed up a detective car to give to somebody else.
So the cars you bought with the narcotics money, how many of them were new?
None.
None of them were new. So you really only got 10.
But they're good shape cars. I mean,
New
we got
cars.
warranties on them, and the dealer was really good
Okay.
to us. And
That allowed you to get more versus buying it. Very good. Okay.
Chairman Garris,
Yes.
can I make a comment?
Yes.
Just on the detention center, just wanted to point out that on the fed bed count, that this year we have 92 fed beds that was the goal. In the new year's budget, that has been reduced down to 70. That is about a $600,000 loss in revenue that we won't be able to book. But I think it's probably important to note that since we're not opening E-Block at this time, and also I think we need to keep in mind that as the jail population grows, we are going to have to step down the fed bed count to accommodate local prisoners, but that does come at a cost. But I did want you to be aware that we are going from, as a budgetary number, 92 fed beds per year down to 70 this year, beginning July 1.
But that's probably a more realistic approach than the 92 we had in this year's budget because we didn't get the full 92, did we? Okay. Okay. Okay, are there any further questions to our sheriff? Thank you very much, Sheriff.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it very much, and thank you
appreciate it.
guys for coming also. Next item on our agenda is public health, and Dr. Morrow will come forward and present that to us.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Let's see if I can get to. Okay. Commissioners, good morning, and thank you again for having me this year. I know things are looking a little bit brighter than they did last year at this time. I know last year when I came before you, the Affordable Care Act was before the U.S. Supreme Court, and so a lot of things were hanging in the balance, as they say. Fortunately, we've got a little bit more settled this year, although our excuse me, our federal and state funding is still somewhat tenuous at this point, and the General Assembly is busy, as you know, making some active changes. Some of those are in the public health arena. Just take a second to remind folks about our Board of Health that is our policy-making body for the Health Department. This is, I think, our 96th year of Pitt County Public Health. Our chair is Mr. Jeff Wilson. He's an engineer. Our other representatives include the professionals of optometry with Lady Aycock from Farmville. Dr. Johnson is our commissioner member. Dr. D.H. Taylor, dentist. Tina Dixon is an at-large member. Dr. Judith Kirkendall is our nurse representative. Dr. Keith Ramsey, who's on the faculty at ECU in infectious disease, is our physician representative. Juvencio Peralta is another at-large member. He works particularly with the Hispanic Latino community here in Pitt County and in the region, really. Mr. Porter Stokes is another, our most recent at-large member who's joined the board. Dr. Mark Hayes, veterinarian, and then our pharmacist is vacant right now, so I'd just take this opportunity, if y'all know a pharmacist or people watching this know a pharmacist who'd be interested in serving on our Board of Health, we'd be very interested in talking to them. So this is our breakdown of our organizational chart. You can see we have 5 divisions: environmental health, personal health, that's our clinical services, WIC Nutrition, which is a supplemental food program providing nutritious foods to women and young children, health education, and then our administration. Our key location is the Earl Trevathan building at Government Circle in the office park. We also have the old Hill-Burton building across the street here that houses our environmental health services. And then we still have the mobile dental safari that visits the elementary schools throughout the county. Some of the updated statistics on services that are performed by the health department each year. There are about 2,800 sanitation inspections done, 4,300 on-site wastewater visits, 12,000 environmental consultations, 1,700 permits and authorizations. We do around 15,400 clinical visits. That's about 65 per day on average. And about 40, our WIC caseload right now is 4,800 people. That's not actual visits. That's the number of people who are enrolled in the WIC services. So those 4,800 actually may have several visits throughout the year. To get to our budget where we are right now, our revenues budgeted for this fiscal year, $9.6 million. As of April the 30th, we're at $7.3 million in revenues. Our expenditures were at $7.2 million, so you can see our revenues exceed our expenditures by just over $100,000. Based on our current projections with the extra payroll, I think is that May or June coming up, we anticipate we're going to use about $100,000 of fund balance. So just to tell you a little bit about our fund balance, since 2004, we've been using a varying amount of the health department's fund balance to support our general operational cost. In 2012, we were fortunate enough that our Medicaid cost settlement from 2011 came in fairly high, and so we actually added funds to our fund balance last year. That hadn't happened in some time. Our present fund balance right now is a little over $1 million, $1,052,000. All of our fund balance is restricted to the Medicaid programs in which it was earned, so these are federal settlement dollars that we get from the Medicaid program. We budgeted $288,000 this year in our current budget, but as I just said, we anticipate using about $100,000 is our best guess at this point, and that would leave us with $952,600 starting in July. So our requested budget for 2013-2014 revenues and expenses, $9,245,433. Now we'll just take a moment to explain that this does differ from the manager's recommendation, and the difference is a half a position in our environmental health services. I met with the manager the other day, and we talked about this a little bit. And my feeling as the health director is that we really do need a full-time person this year. We hope that within 2 years we can transition to where we may not need as much personnel in that area, but we only have one clerical position right now. We tried moving a part-time person over there from other areas this year. It did not work well. Right now we've got our inspectors and the director of the division answering the phone a lot, covering lunch so that our clerical staff, the one clerical staff we have, can go to lunch, and if she's out, we're really shorthanded. So I'm requesting that we make that a full-time position. The manager's asking for us to share that position with with planning department, which I share his wishes to make sure that we coordinate those services very well. I just don't think we're quite there yet, and I hope that with implementation of information systems, this year we're implementing the new federal food code, and we're also, I think, moving to a new on-site electronic system that will help us create some more efficiencies in terms of those clerical duties over the next 2 years. Proposed revenues break down this way at $9.2 million. State and federal is $2.4. County is right above $4 million. Our fees and charges at $1.6 million. Fund balance, as I mentioned, $288,000. Miscellaneous, $816,000. And those are our grants, basically state and federal grants and private grants that we receive. So we budgeted $288,000 to go back into the Medicaid programs where it was earned. As I mentioned, that's a restricted fund balance. And this would represent, the $288,000 would represent about 30% of our estimated fund balance of over $900,000 for the year. Our expenditures break down like this. As you can see, most of this is in salaries, $1.7 million in operating. The capital outlay there, $15,300. That's all basically laboratory and clinical equipment. $5,000 of that is for our bioterrorism lab that the state supports, so that's $5,000 of state funds that would go there. And then $10,000 of clinical equipment that includes like examination beds, scales, and those types of things that go straight into our clinic that are just getting worn out. So overview of this proposed budget, there is no change in the county appropriations that we're requesting. We're putting $288,000 as the same as last year. We have a net decrease with 4.2 full-time equivalents from our current adopted budget that was, well, adopted as of July of last year. It would be a decrease of 4.2 of what was adopted then. We had some early retirements in the fall last year, and we've done some shifting in clinical duties, trying to increase our efficiency, basically. So challenges we're looking at for next year, so I mentioned the federal and state budget cuts. We are still just getting some of the repercussions of sequestration from the federal dollars coming down. You've all heard about Medicaid reform. The state is changing that drastically. Secretary Vosh, Secretary of Health and Human Services, is coming to Greenville this Thursday, and I plan to meet with her and the director of the Medicaid program. I'm president of our Health Directors Association this year for the state, so I've been very involved with a lot of what's going on with Medicaid reform and with a lot of the legislative activities this year. I think our biggest, our other challenge, I should say, with next year is integration of public health and primary care. Public health is changing very rapidly. We're finding that we need to be, as healthcare reform comes into place, the insurance system is changing drastically. People are going to be enrolled in new insurance programs this fall, starting in October, and going into next year. And part of what we have to do is integrate our public health clinical services into those primary care services in the medical model. We still have to maintain our focus on population health and prevention, and we will still have to do the old duties that we've had in terms of communicable disease control through our environmental health services, through our immunization programs, and through our communicable disease tracking, things like STDs and other communicable disease outbreaks like the TB outbreak we had last year down at Aiden Grifton School that took so much of our staff and effort. Those things are going to continue to happen, I think, and may even happen more as we see resistant strains of germs propagating through the country and the world, really. So that's all I have for you this morning. I'll be glad to answer any questions. Or
Yes, sir. Dr. Marr, have you received any funds from Homeland Security recently?
We're still receiving some of the Homeland Security dollars through preparedness coming through the CDC, but those dollars have been squeezed the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. The last word we got was that they would be stable for next year, but I'm not sure I believe that until I see it.
Do you have anyone over at the health department that is working with mental health patients now, currently?
We don't have anybody dedicated to mental health services. Unfortunately, there are some, I'll tell you, there are some health departments, Cumberland County, has implemented some mental health services. A lot of people don't realize that mental health actually came out of public health back in the 60s because there were no mental health departments. So public health did that just like they started home health agencies back in the 60s, 70s. So we're sort of going back to that because of all the problems that have occurred with mental health reform. And one of my concerns is that we don't see a repeat of that with Medicaid reform, where they really damage our local health departments.
And lastly, is infant mortality continuing to decrease?
Yes, sir, it is here in Pitt County. That's been a long road, about 35 years we've been working on that. And we are seeing the trend continue to come down. It only takes, one baby to make those statistics jump up pretty much. But we're looking at 5-year trends, and we are seeing improvements there. And I'm real proud of the staff that we've had, and not just our staff, but the community that is gathered around that issue with a Pitt Infant Mortality Prevention Advisory Council that meets regularly to address the concerns of infant mortality. So we are seeing improvements, not as much as we like. We've still got a long way to go, but we are improving things.
Mr. James?
I have two things. One of them, the manager probably can, but I didn't know where to ask this. One of them was the inspection department took all of theirs away from the county. When was it, Mr.
Well, it's effective, I think, coming up.
Right, and so I took it about, I said, I want to know why. And I find that the answer that I got was that we were charging more, and when them fell out, they could make more money. And I wanted to ask you then, how does that, you didn't mention it in the budget and so forth, but, we upped the fees. We said we were going to charge the fees what it costs to do these inspections. But did we overstep that, Mr. Manager? And I know it's kind of in with this, too.
We anticipated probably a 20% decrease in overall revenues for inspections because Winterville has chosen to take it in-house. At the point in time which they took it in-house, they hadn't even established their own fee schedule. They didn't even know what they were looking at ours to do to mimic ours. They had to decide what they were going to do. In terms of being overstaffed, I would say no. As we're seeing the housing market come back, we don't feel like we've reduced staff, both building inspectors, permitting clerks. Through the recession, we used to have 5 permitting clerks. We now have 2 building inspectors. I think we used to have 4 or 5, and now we have 3 maybe. So we feel like this is positioning us for as the business starts to come back with inspections in the market.
Mr. James, that will not impact public health at all.
Yeah, that's why, but I knew it was kind of with the inspection.
Right, we continue to inspect Winterville.
The thing that really concerned me was the television. Pitt County, made the headlines for everywhere for unwed mothers.
Yes, sir.
I don't need to tell you that, of course. And that is in your department, so to speak. Yes. I haven't heard anybody mention it. But it's an honor that I didn't like.
No, it's not.
It's an honor I hope that all of you are concerned about. And what is being done pertaining to this issue? Is anything being done? I haven't heard it mentioned. And it was kind of surprising. I said, well, I know I'm going to hear something about this. But nobody has said a word. But, of course, I knew it was very high because I was involved with Bellboy Elementary School for years. And when my wife principal about that, she said, you won't believe it, but between 60 and 70% of these students do not have but one parent in that school. And evidently it's gone not at that one particular school, but it's gone countywide. And I think that we, as people here, we ought to be very much concerned because this is what causes problems in the jail. It causes it everywhere. And are we doing anything pertaining to teaching these young people, not only the females, but the males? They're responsible too. It takes 2.
Yes, sir.
Tango, I believe.
Yes, sir.
They used to anyway. I reckon it still does.
I think it still does.
But anyway, Are we doing anything, Dr. Moore, really?
We are. Are we doing enough? I would say not. But we do have one of our staff who works in the middle schools and the high schools and really is getting at-risk children identified and helping them, directing them away from sexual activity and helping them understand what the responsibilities of parenthood are. The other program that we've just got, and I think I may have talked to y'all a little bit about last year, is called Positive Parenting Program, or Triple P. And we got this grant through the National Association of City and County Health Officials and the CDC. We were one of 2 places in the whole country that got this grant. It's now being replicated in other places in North Carolina, but this is all about getting parenting into the culture. I think our culture has changed, and I'm sure you've witnessed that.
Oh, yeah.
That being a single parent today is an acceptable thing in our culture. It's not stigmatized like it was when I was young, which I'm not sure that's not bad, I don't think, but we want children to grow up before they become parents. And so we've got to give them opportunities that help them learn what being responsible as parents means.
Yeah, see, let me say this to you. I taught school for a long time.
Yes, sir.
And I took it upon myself. I had all boys, so I could talk to those boys.
Right.
And I don't know whether they do that anymore or not, but we are not reaching these people, these young people, in time, I don't believe. I don't believe that the majority of them really want to get pregnant. I mean,
Right.
But
I
I
agree.
think that somebody, and the parents, since they're separated, they're not teaching them as they once did. But I don't have to answer to it, but I know one thing. It's costing the taxpayer, the school system, the sheriff's department, a lot of money, and I don't think we're spending that. You like to keep some things under the rug, especially if they're bad. And I think something this important, it needs to be, we need to teach these people that, look, this is not the way. I hope churches are getting more involved in it and so forth. All I got to say, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Coulson?
Well, I made my comments about that subject
Yeah,
a little while
I
ago,
started to say that too.
and I tell you, it's a big problem. And I don't know that you can change the social mores. It is now acceptable. Somebody that's 15 or 16 years old they're congratulated for getting pregnant. I think it's the wrong message to send. And I don't know. I don't know where it's going to end up, other than the fact that this is going to bite us in years to come. It's going to, and I don't know that there's enough money. But overall, Dr. Morrow, I think you and your department do a great job for the limited funds that you have. And I got nothing further to say.
Commissioner Wood?
I want to reiterate that last statement. I think you all do a remarkable job. Thank you for what you do and helping us keep on track and all of us during the year. And the one question I had was about the half-time clerical position. And we might, anyway, I might need to speak to it later when you're asking for directives, but I'll kind of give them now. Is there a .5 person working in this position now? Okay, so this will be a new position and you asked for a full-time one, and it's only .5. What other responsibilities would that clerical assistant pick up besides just answering the phone and making appointments and that sort of thing?
Well, it's actually not making it, well, they
Well,
make
whatever.
appointments too.
I mean, for
Most of it-
inspectors to go
Right.
out.
We have about 16 folks bringing paperwork constantly. That the data has to be entered into the different systems, the PASS system. We also have a system that has to be reported for the state. So we're putting data in. Most of it is, some of it's clerical, some of it is answering the phone, but most of it is handling the information that the 16 inspectors are bringing back and making sure that we can find that information at a later date in a good way. And of course, automation is going to make that easier as we move that along, and that's where we're heading. But so I think the manager and I are total agreement in terms of where we want to get. I just don't think we're quite there yet, and I think we need about 2 years.
I just think we needed to hear that there was a bigger responsibility for this position as far as the need.
Yeah, we had 2 people before. One retired, and then we hired another, and she was really doing well, training, and then she left us and moved, and then we lost the position. We've tried to
Get it
tried
back.
everything to
got
make
you.
it work, but it's not working very well.
Okay,
So.
thank you.
Commissioner Owens?
Dr. Marl, how much money did it take to get you and Scott together, though?
About $20,000.
How much?
About a little over $20,000 is what we
Thank you,
figured
sir.
out, John. I
Like
think so.
that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Johnson?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity. Since I'm the member of the Board of Health, I think I should point out that the Board of Health is very aware of the respect that Dr. Morrow has in both the state and the nation in terms of public health. And that's real important to the citizens of Pitt County. And it means that that he travels a lot throughout the state and nation. And he can use some help, Mr. James, at the Bernstein Center over there. As one member of the Board of Health, I believe that the Bernstein Center can pick up a lot of the work that the health department is doing in terms of public health. And we need to encourage the staff of the Bernstein Center to help us with that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner McLaughlin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to personally thank you for your visibility and your effort in reaching the community. I've been various places in terms of just impacting the citizens of Pitt County, especially some of the lower income level and the less fortunate. You've been visible. I want to thank you for that. Also, I want to ask you this question as to what, if anything, has the legislative proposed change in Medicaid affecting the Pitt County Health Department?
Well, it depends on how it shakes out, basically. The proposal that they have right now is to have 3 entities across the state, maybe 4. We're not sure if one of those is going to be the community care plans, which we've been partners with the community care plan from the beginning. It's a provider-based organization, including health departments, social services, where we came together and said, you know, how do we save Medicaid dollars? How do we prevent some of these illnesses? How do we manage these at-risk populations better? So we've been doing that for over 10 years now through the community care plan. If the governor and secretary and the Medicaid director opt to bring private insurance companies in to operate Medicaid, like they've done in some of these other states, I think it could be a real critical cut to public health. What we've seen in other states is that these insurance companies make a lot of money in Medicaid, but they tend to restrict access and decrease services and sometimes diminish quality. So most of the states that I'm aware of that have done this are now trying to figure out how do we do what North Carolina's done over the last 10 years. North Carolina had the lowest rate of increase in Medicaid cost in the whole country in the last 3 years. So other states are trying to copy what we've done. I'm not sure why we want to entertain the possibility of private businesses taking some of the Medicaid operations away from community care plan. I think it would hurt particularly small health departments in rural areas. Medicaid funding is critical to the operation of those health departments. And a lot of people don't realize, but Medicaid, when it was put together back in the 60s and 70s, public health was at the table with Medicaid. And so it was done purposefully. Medicaid was put in place in a way that helped fund local health departments because they knew that they're essential community providers and that local, particularly rural areas, needed local health departments to provide clinical services. And so that Medicaid funding has been that way for about 40 years, and it's worked very well. But I think we're looking at right now the potential of that just being taken away from public health. And we've got to convince, I think, the Medicaid director, who's new to North Carolina, and the secretary, who hadn't had any experience in North Carolina public health until she took this job, how we've been doing it in North Carolina and why it's critical to at-risk populations, to poor people, to have local health departments available to provide those services when nobody else will do it. And physicians are going to have their hands even more full. I'm talking about private physicians. With healthcare reform, you're going to have a lot more insured population. So those primary care docs that are out there are looking at their caseloads increasing. There are, how hard it is already to get an appointment at a doctor's office right now. So the medical school's trying to produce more physicians and providers, but we've got to figure out a different way to take care of populations because our populations are getting sicker. We're spending twice as much money per capita as any other country in the world on health care, and we've got poor quality. Things like infant mortality are worse than some of these countries that spend 1/10 of what we do per capita on health care. So we've got to fix it, and public health, I think, is a part of that solution to how we fix it. But we've got to have some support from Medicaid to help us do that, too. Or at least some transition year to get to where it needs to be.
Okay, Commissioner Webb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Morrow, for your presentation.
Yes, sir.
There's no doubt about your credentials and influence. We appreciate everything that you're doing.
Thank you.
I have a couple quick questions. When it comes to the study that we've referred to a few times already about the out-of-wedlock births, the breakdown on that, is that just a new a cultural thing now where it's just acceptable to have a child out of wedlock, or is it more teenage pregnancies, which I think in the past would have made up the bulk? Is it now just the under the mid-20s standard now that to not get married and have a child?
That's a great question, and that I don't have the answer to that yet. And that was part of the reason I think, Mr. James, you haven't heard a lot of from us on this issue, because this was census data that was taken, and we haven't had a chance to. It's new. It's new data that we haven't seen before in years past, but we haven't had time to figure out who are those people. We know it's 15 to, I think it's 45. I can't remember exactly from last week, but it's women of childbearing age. But whether the most of that is in that younger teen pregnancies, we don't think so. So my suspicion is it probably is the 18 to 30-year-olds more so than it is the teens.
That would also be my suspicion as well, because all the data that we've heard over the past several years is that teen pregnancies are down.
Right.
But what we also hear is that young adults are choosing not to get married.
Correct.
And I know that sometimes comes down to a difference in what we're taught. When I was taught health class, and I'm just a little younger than most folks, so it hadn't been that long ago that we were taught that the nuclear family was the ideal. And I don't believe that, for the sake of not hurting others' feelings or whatever, that is not what's taught anymore. And when you look at stability in the family, one of the best statistics I've seen about the importance of fathers in the home, in the nuclear family, is that at prisons, the biggest day for male going out is Mother's Day, and the smallest day for male going out is Father's Day. And I think that's a good indicator of where we need to be directing our young people. And but not to go down that rabbit hole too far, when it comes to the Affordable Care Act, I'd heard the potential for this, I don't know if it's been discussed anymore, is that since the state has opted not to implement an exchange, that there is a possibility that the federal government may look at counties to implement exchanges. Where are we at on that? And what will that cost us should that happen?
That's a great question. I hadn't found anybody who knows the answer yet. I was on conference calls last week. Department of Social Services and Public Health are trying to get together to discuss what's going to happen with the Navigator program the federal government is providing. I think it's about $2.2 million to the state for navigators to enroll people starting in October into these insurance plans. But the state has taken their hands off of it, so it's left local agencies or churches or nonprofit organizations to step up to help people get enrolled somehow. And we don't know who's going to take the lead on that at this point. So there are a lot of people talking about it. There's not any money in it. I mean, $2.2 million, once you spread it across 100 counties, is not very significant. And of course, most of that, probably needs to be where people are. So you're looking at population centers like Charlotte and Wake County, bigger counties, getting the bulk of it probably. So we don't know what's going to happen with that enrollment process yet. It's been very confusing so far, I think, all the way from the federal government down. So that's where I'm at right now, is trying to figure out, does social services or public health get involved in this, and if so, how and when? And well, we know when, but we don't know who would pay for it. We certainly are not planning to look towards the county to start funding that.
And one last thing, and I thought about you the other day because of a previous conversation that we had was I was at the grocery store, and I bought my $5 bag of apples, and then when I left, I heard an advertisement for the Hardee's Big Box meal, which you can feed about 3 people off of it for $5. And my concern there, as we've spoke before, about getting affordable, healthier options to our populations that are underserved, underprivileged. Is there any money coming in from the state? Is there any subsidy, anything where we're helping move that to our, because you see our obesity problem exists mostly in our impoverished areas, and it's because of access and a lot of other factors, but also there's not a farmer's market within walking distance, and trying to get where they can pay for it. So then you do get the big box meal for little money, and you suffer the health consequences, which then come back again when they visit you with heart problems, lung problems from smoking, which is another side effect or another contributor. Is there anything moving forward in that area?
There is, I think we talked about before, the Communities Putting Prevention to Work grant, which was a federal grant we got, one of 2 in the state a couple of years ago. That grant ran out last fall, and to replace that, the state applied and received a community transformation grant through the CDC. This is actually Affordable Care Act funding that supports the community transformation grants. And it's going to 98 counties in North Carolina. Our region here, we have, we're the fiscal agent for Region 10 that has 9 counties in it surrounding Pitt. And the 3 areas are healthy eating, active living, and smoke-free environments. So they're working on those issues. Not as much money as we had under the Communities Putting Prevention to Work grant a couple of years ago, but it's about $7.4 million for the whole state per year going towards those issues. So we're trying to do things working with farmers markets in Greene County. We just did smoke-free park policy down in, when I say we, they did it actually. It was Carteret County that did that. They're working on something similar over in Beaufort County. So those things are going on, but not near as much money as we would like to see go towards those prevention efforts. But it really is around policies, trying to get zoning and planning to look at where do the parks need to be, where do the sidewalks to get people to those parks need to be, and how do we get fresh fruits and vegetables into the corner stores. We've done some of that here in Pitt County. We want to do more of that. So we're working on it, but we don't have a lot of money or a lot of staff. We do have four staff working on the community transformation grant, but again, they're covering all 9 counties. So,
Thank you for your answers. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. We appreciate
Yes, sir.
your presentation, and we hear the concern you have about that additional $20,000 to fund that one full-time person. We're sensitive to that. I
Mr.
think you've heard
Chairman?
some of us express that, and we will
Thank you.
surely look at that as we continue to approve this budget.
Well, we appreciate
Thank you
your
very much.
consideration.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
I had one part of a question I didn't ask when I was my turn, and I would like to ask,
She'll go on.
Dr. Morrow,
Yes, sir.
if the new cases of AIDS decreased or they increased in the last year?
I have to go back and look, Mr. Hammond. I hadn't studied that data just recently, but I would say our HIV rates, I believe, have increased in the last year. We saw an increase in syphilis rates over the last 2 years, and typically what we'll see is HIV tends to follow the syphilis rate. So I think it has increased in the last year, the numbers, and I can get the exact numbers for you and be glad to send
I
that to you.
appreciate it.
I'll have
Thank
it
you,
for you
sir.
this week. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is discussion, questions, and directives, and these will be directed towards our manager and staff. So again, why don't we just go down the line? We'll start with you, Mr. Hammond. You have
I
any
don't
further
have-
questions?
I don't have anything yet.
Okay, very
But
good.
I've already.
Mr. James,
No, not yet.
Mr. Coulson, Mr. Wood.
Just the things that we've mentioned, I think you all have been writing, so thank you very much.
Mr. Owens?
I got a couple of things I want the manager, and first is this $20,000 that Dr. Marl. I'd like for him to visit that and see what could be feasibility of that further than what we've had today. Secondly, I want the manager to come back with some indication of where he'd put these 30 vehicles, if he'd get new vehicles, in light of some of the conversation we've had here today. That might need some merit as to my thinking, whether or not I'd vote for 30 or 20 or whatever, but I think we gleaned some information today that was not consistent with some of the thinkings that we'd had. Thirdly, I don't think that this board is to micromanage what the school board wants. I know every member of this board is anxious and aware of the dangers and of why we might need more resource officers. But I think that prerogative should come from the school board. I believe we have 9 presently, in addition to the ones that's in the city. But then that burdens me to the point of whether or not, if all 6 of these that a grant was requested were needed, I want the school board to tell us if they need 15 or 20. If we're going to undertake that ourselves as commissioners, then that's a different prerogative. But I'd like for Scott to get with the superintendent and come back about this grant. It appears that there's an issue of time limit about the grant. That should be taken care of. But then lastly, in concluding on that, if we get 6 grants and 25% of it's funded from the county for 3 years, and then the 4th year 100% is funded, experience tells me that once you hire other employees and you've had them 3 or 4 years, you're going to have them continuously if the need is there. And if that need is there for that, we ought to do it. But those are the things that I'd like for Scott to bring back to us, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioner Johnson?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to point out that Mr. Mike Taylor, who's Director of MIS for the county, is in regular attendance at the Board of Health meetings, and he's able to bring back to the county manager important information. And also present today is our finance officer of the Board of Health, John Reed. And I'm just interested in recognizing those two.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner McLaughlin.
Mr. Chairman, I just only want to thank Scott and Dwayne Holder for their fine working together. I think this is a very impressive budget proposal, and I'm very pleased thus far in the way it's going. Thank you very much.
Very good. Commissioner Webb?
Adjourn.
Commissioner Webb?
I'm not far behind that, no. I just want to echo what everyone else said. Thank you to the staff, and I think what Mr. Owens' comments with regards to the school board, very prudent, and I agree. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. We want to thank you, Scott, and your staff for the excellent presentation. I have one request. And I don't think this is getting too detailed, but if I'm going to vote to fund $600,000 a year for new vehicles, I need to understand where they're going. I did not get a clear picture of the 20 or 21 new vehicles or vehicles that the sheriff added to his fleet or replaced in his fleet this past year. Can you get me a list of the kind of vehicle that was purchased, whether it was new or used, the dollars that was paid for it, and to whom it was assigned? I don't need to know the specific name of the person, but I need to know the function of the person that it was assigned to. That would help me in making these decisions about these future cars, at the tune of $600,000 a year. I appreciate that. Any further questions or comments?
Jimmy, don't you forget social service. Those women have to have good cause to go out and to visit. So don't you forget, it's not only.
That is one of the reasons that I asked for that list.
That's right.
Because I know there are other entities that need new vehicles also.
They need it very badly. And this is one county commission is telling you, hold the line. Don't come up with new spending.
Any further? Well, now what we want to do is to make a motion to recess until 8:30 in the morning.
So move.
Do I have a motion? Okay, motion, second.
Second.
Let's vote. So we'll see you in the morning at 8:30.
Yeah. And now this is off the record. Remember, Pitt County is not.
Talking in the microphone.